Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Nerd Rage Gaming First League Challenge of the 2024 season. My name is Dan Hugar. I am here with Frank Mintmeyer, and we're going to be commentating the first and all of these 6 rounds of highly competitive Pokemon. So, Frank, can you introduce yourself and tell the people why we should listen to you?
Sure. So, as Dan mentioned, my name is Frank. I'd say I'm pretty good at Pokemon. I have a number of day twos. Most notably, I'm on NRG and know a lot of top players as well that I work with on decks and such. So, I'm excited to see this league challenge. I've been phasing in and out of playing since I know I won't be attending Worlds. So, I'm excited to kind of get back into it in a competitive environment.
Absolutely, and we are happy to have you here. Frank is an excellent player who's had, like you said, a lot of great results, including a top 8 in the last season playing Arceus Duraludon. And my name is Dan. As I mentioned, I am a mediocre player, but I've gotten global finals in 2 of the Player Cups, top 32 at the most recent Milwaukee Regionals, and then top 64 day 2 at the World Championships in 2022. So I've played the game once or twice. And here in front of us, we have 2 recent world qualifiers, Evan for the past 8 years, just skipping one, and Mo, who qualified for Worlds this year. Mo is playing the Rapid Strike box, which features Inteleon VMAX, Urshifu VMAX, while Evan plays the Arceus Aerodactyl deck that just says fill your entire board with exactly what you need and judge path your opponent, apparently. So, Frank, aside from just ruining Mo's day, what's Evan trying to do here at this turn?
So Evan's deck's pretty neat. Evan's deck was tested by him and all of his friends for NEIC. The main premise of the deck was to have good Gardevoir and Lost Box matchups. Obviously, Urshifu and Teleon wasn't a deck they really were scheming at the moment for NEIC. So the deck plays deck cards like Box of Disaster. It's got Aerodactyl in there. Just good attackers that aren't really prone to weakness. So Evan's just like you said, looking to use Judge and Path, looking to set up an Arceus, and then set up Aerodactyl is a pretty solid backup attacker in this matchup.
And in this setup, so going into Mo's deck right now, Evan has a pretty good setup with the Arceus down, Aerodactyl on the board, the Bidoof, but Mo still has an opportunity to take a couple prizes here, at least one prize, with a Rapid or Gale Thrust from Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. So coming into Mo's turn here, what do you think Mo's going to try to do?
Well, I think Mo, like you see, he's eyeing up that Octillery. Octillery is the backbone of the consistency aspect of this deck, so that's going to be crucial to get down. It also allows him to get more value off this Irida. And then that escape rope, probably just looking to attack with Urshifu this turn. It forces Evan to give up the Bidoof. You can't get rid of Arceus at this point. So I think he's just going to be looking to take away Evan's consistency off of this judge.
And I'm curious to see what Mo decides to go into here. Does he bench something else and strafe? Does he just attack with 100 Furious Blows? Either way, it'll probably survive the turn since Evan will likely have to attach a double turbo in order to hit into that Rapid Strike Urshifu.
Right, I think you definitely want to use 100 Furious Blows. You could use Rapid Flow, but then Rapid Flow would leave this Urshifu with no way of attacking on the following turn. Additionally, as you said, since the 100 Furious Blows from the Urshifu V does not leave Mo's Urshifu V in any sort of danger. In addition, he has still has that Force Seal Stone and the unused V-Star power. So Mo can just sit here this turn, take away Evan's consistency, and respond to whatever turn Evan has.
So one risk Mo took by going into that play is if Evan had found his Raihan into Aerodactyl V-Star, he could have knocked out the Urshifu and just cleared the board, which it looks like it's not going to go that way. Although, wow, what is Evan doing over there? He immediately gets the double evolution judge. So now he just needs to draw a path bounce or a double turbo to be able to just advance his game plan. So for Mo, what's your response going to be here if Evan attacks into you?
Well, I think this Urshifu won't be evolving. I'm pretty sure Evans in his game plan is accepting the fact that this Arceus is going to die to 100 Furious Blows.
Ooh, and unfortunately, it looks like Arceus is going to die to 200 Furious Blows without attacking
Yeah,
because,
that's not very good.
no, Evan whiffed the double turbo energy off the judge.
Yeah, so had Evan drawn a double turbo energy off this judge, Evan would have been just looking up to power up this Aerodactyl, potentially power up the Arceus depending on the other cards in his hand to respond to this 100 Furious Blows and then look to build his board. But this turn, I think Mo can just put himself in a very advantageous position. He has an Irida, still has the Seal Stone, and has a guaranteed knockout on this Arceus. So this Urshifu will likely take, in addition to these 2 prize cards, it's about to take another prize card or 2.
Absolutely, because right now the only way Evan really will be able to attack this turn with a V-Star or anything that does damage is with Raihan. And I don't know if I saw the Raihan in hand, just a boss. So if he isn't able to get the energy, is the game just over for him?
Yeah, it's going to be really tough for him to come back from that position. I think as long as Mo is able to chain attacks, Evan's going to have a long string of events go both his way and then not go things not go Mo's way. So, but yeah, just to uh, answer your question, I would say that whipping the energy attachment this next turn or just an attack is going to basically just be all there is for Evan.
And that's one of the downsides to the heavy path build that Evan plays. Arceus decks a lot of times are reliant on that Starbirth in order to set up and get your game going. But with Evan, and here we go, we are going to see a Bibarel come out. But with Evan having the path to the peak down, he has no way to Starbirth, and he isn't able to just go search into his deck and get the piece he needs.
Right. Yeah, I think ideally Evan would see a Raihan off of this. A Raihan and then either a double turbo energy or an Arceus or a stadium. Or actually he would need the stadium and the Raihan off of this Bidoof in order to Starbirth for the DT. He's gonna need a lot off of this, but
Yes.
it's gonna be very tough.
And unfortunately, none of those were it.
I mean, he does have the DT, so he can at least power up this Aerodactyl. But even through Box of Disaster, this Aerodactyl can still not one-shot their Shifu VMAX. That probably will come down next turn.
Correct. And Frank, oh, well, and here's the other thing. Mo's just going to win the game this turn because he's going to G-Max Rapid Flow to knock out the Bibarel and the Arceus Active.
All
And
right,
just
he's at 3
close out the
prizes.
game.
I thought he was at 4. Yeah, yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
he's at 3 prize range. So this is why, ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 games on stream because that took 35 seconds. So in general, just for closeout for this game, this is really the way that both decks wanted to play out, except for Evan missing energy. Evan wants to get up his attackers, stream judge path, and force Mo and his opponents to try to draw off it. And Mo just wants to get his attackers to consistently stream attacks and build his board of rapid strike like attackers
Right.
and setup pieces.
Yeah, had Evan actually been able to get up that turn 2 Trinity Nova, that Urshifu would have only been limited to 3 prizes. Mo would have had to choose to grab other cards with Rapid Strike Search and Force Sealstone and Irida, so his entire game plan would have changed.
And with that, we're going to jump over to our second game. Again, that's why we have a backup. And over here, we have Joe Storino playing against Dan Ibarra. So Joe is playing the Arceus Rayquaza VMAX deck, and Dan is playing the Lost Zone Giratina deck. So I'm happy to talk a bit about the Arc Ray, but Frank, can you tell us a bit about Lost Zone Tina and what that deck tries to do?
So Lasso and Giratina has been getting a lot of hype recently on the online circuit, Twitter, etc. Uh, I'm not sure if Dan's playing the cross switchers in his deck or not, but the main purpose of Lasso and Giratina is to get to 7 in the Lost Zone relatively fast in certain matchups like against Arceus and start using Lost Impact as frequently as possible. And other smaller one prize matchups, the purpose is to get to Sableye as fast as possible through the use of things like Abyss Seeking and Colress and maybe Lost Vacuum if that is in the deck. So I guess in this matchup, like I said, for Arceus, Dan is going to be looking to use a Giratina V-Star to take 2 to 5 prizes, considering that Rayquaza VMAX does give up 3.
And that is really, I love the Machamp on the board, by the way. But Dan apparently does not play the cross switchers, so he is going to be reliant on that single boss's orders to really gust up anything on Joe's side of the board.
Mhm.
But for Joe's side, Joe, like I said, is playing Arceus Rayquaza VMAX. So what Joe will do is use Arceus to set up the board, set up the engine, get all his pieces in play, and then use a card Amarouche, I don't know how I'm saying that correctly, from the Scarlet and Violet base set. What that card says is that once, or as often you like during your turn, you can move a basic fire energy from your bench to your active Pokemon. And so how that works here is Joe will use Magma Basin, he'll accelerate energy with Arceus, and use it to set up a bunch of different attackers, including Rayquaza VMAX to take giant one-shots, Delphox V, which is in the discard as you can see, that says Lost Zone 2 energy attached to it and snipe 120 damage to the bench, and a couple other miscellaneous attackers to kind of fill it out. And Joe right now looks like he's going to be in a very advantageous position, especially if he's able to knock out this Giratina, since Dan's board is just kind of slowing down a bit.
Yeah, looking at Dan's board, he did take a prize, presumably on the Vroom, the lower evolution of Revavroom.
I think it may be on the Charcadet.
Oh,
which is in the discard under the Delphox.
Oh, the Charcadet didn't get Ultra Ball. I was
Yes.
looking at Joe's discard trying to see what his first couple plays had been since we jumped in after his first couple plays, so I'd assume that was an Ultra Ball, but there aren't any other Pokemon, so it would have to be that Charcadet.
Yes.
But yeah, it looks like Dan does recognize that Giratina V-Star is super strong in this matchup, though. Getting 2 down, getting to that 7 in the Lost Zone threshold. So now Dan's just going to be looking to attack with Lost Impact into an Arceus, and then essentially say that any Rayquaza VMAX that Joe puts down is in danger from here on out.
And Joe and I were actually talking about this a bit with the deck because I've loved the deck and I've been playing it. It's a lot of fun. But the downside of having the Rayquaza VMAX is that it is a 3-prizer and it can really accelerate the game plan for your opponent if you put it into play. And there Joe uses what I think is the coolest card in the deck, the Reverum. So what Reverum says is that once during your turn, you can discard an energy card from your hand and draw until you have 6 cards in hand. So what Joe just did there is discard the last card in his hand, which was a double turbo, and drew 6 cards straight off the top, completely refreshing his hand and getting his board set up.
Yeah, it's pretty good in a deck like this, where after 1 DTE, your other attackers can't capitalize off of it. So you're going to be looking to use your basic energies more. It also has great synergy with Magma Basin, as we saw him Ultra Ball with that fire energy, probably to use with that Magma Basin. So it's just another way to get your energies in the discard and accelerate a fast Rayquaza attack.
Absolutely. And I think that's the big argument for Reverum over something like the barrel because you're able to accelerate ditching that energy and getting your engine going with that magma basin. So a wrinkle here though is obviously Joe's missing the Charcadet turn 1 because Dan knocked it out, which means he's not going to be able to accelerate in the same way he would like. But the other issue is that when you use Magma Basin, you do damage your bench, which means for Dan, it's really going to set up Sableye turns for him.
Yeah, I think depending on what the damage goes to, which goes to the Charcadet, right? Because it has to be fire Pokemon.
Yes, and he also plays Radiant Charizard, a couple other fire attackers, but in this case, it would be Charcadet. And
Gotcha.
Joe finds the Choice Belt off the Iono to knock out the Giratina V. That's a big swing play.
That is a big swing play. The only danger of this play, though, is that depending on the amount of choice belts that Joe plays and the response that Dan can have this turn, which he has a Colress, so should be able to respond with a Giratina V-Star. There is no Rayquaza V on the bench for Joe to respond with a VMAX, which means he's going to be reliant on Radiant Charizard, the Magma Basin staying in play, attaching, getting a switching out. There's going to be a lot of things that Joe needs in response, but it's all going to depend on if Dan is able to knock out this active Arceus V-Star.
And that is one issue with the deck as built right now, is that you have Rayquaza to take the giant reaching knockouts, but if you don't have that available, you're kind of capped here at 200, 230 damage on a V. And unfortunately, going into EX decks like Chien-Pao, it's a little sketchier because the only thing that can knock out a Chien-Pao is a Rayquaza VMAX or a Radiant Charizard.
Right.
But for Dan, he's really just trying to set up his board here. And he does find Colress, which that is both an amazing and horrible Colress.
Yeah, it has. On the bright side, it has a Jet Energy in it, which he could elect to take if he doesn't have any outs to a switching card. But on the downside, there's a lot of energies in that hand, a lot of resources you'd rather see later in the game, like that Super Rod and the boss, etc.
Losing that boss, I think, is the biggest deal of all of those because that's the only boss that he plays,
Right.
assuming he filled out his deck list correctly.
Yeah, I think Dan, he was just counting his Lost Zone, so I think he's actually going to be looking to use Star Requiem this turn and then Lost Impact on the following turn. I think Dan's recognizing that since there is no Rayquaza VMAX hitting the board anytime soon, let alone a Rayquaza V on the board at all right now, that he doesn't need to preserve this V-Star because he should be able to take the remainder of his prize cards before that's an important wall to get through.
And that's a good point. Just knowing that even if Joe does get one set up, he's probably going to be able to accelerate the game enough to get there in the first place. But I think he did get the Mirage Gate off of that Colress, I believe. And it looks like we are super rotting some guys back in the deck here. So do you think Dan wants to set up a second Giratina?
Mm, I'm not sure because I think Dan knows that one Garatina should be able to get him 4 prizes. Now Dan may not know that a Radiant Charizard is in the deck, or may not know that Radiant Charizard is capable of one-shotting a Garatina, which could impact his decision. And then Dan may also realize that this Charcadet slash Armarouge, whenever it evolves, will become a liability for Joe that Dan can capitalize on to take his remaining prize card. So you could, in terms of trying to keep your board as uh, risk-free, I think benching a Giratina V would be risky because that just means that all Joe needs is an energy and a boss, as opposed to another copy of Choice Belt, which I feel like it's less likely that he plays multiple higher copies of Choice Belt than boss in a deck that can already hit those high numbers to begin with.
And this is one advantage of having this be a league challenge is everyone's required to fill out their deck list.
That is very nice.
So I can tell you, Frank, that Joe plays a single choice belt in his deck.
That makes
So
sense.
once this Arceus goes down, Joe's damage without a Ray on board is going to be capped at that 200 for Arceus or 250 for Radiant
Right.
Charizard.
One thing you did mention, however, is Dan is down his boss. So, if Joe is able to find that Radiant Charizard or just another one prize attacker, then Dan's not going to be able to capitalize off of this Giratina that's going to be able to go unchecked into this next turn.
Absolutely. And Dan going down to 3 prizes also does give Joe the opportunity to Iono him into a slight bit of oblivion. So the advantage here too is because Joe has the Reverum on bench, he will be able to continue to draw even if he does Iono himself or the like. And Joe does have a Super Rod in deck, which would allow him to fill some more energy. And like you said, there comes the Rayquaza. So an interesting play Joe has here available to him if he has an out to Rayquaza VMAX, because Dan's gotten rid of Iono and Roxanne. And I don't think Dan plays more than one of either of those. He does play 2 Iono, but I think both Iono are his lost zone. Am I seeing that correctly, Frank?
I see one. Maybe that's the second one hidden under that Giratina V.
I think you're right. So Joe may be able to confidently say he's keeping his hand. So if he's able to gust up a single prizer from the bench and then force Dan to hit again with his Giratina V-Star, Joe can win the game in 2 attacks.
Yeah, very true. I think Joe is seeing that line, going for 2 Rayquaza V, trying to set up his board in a position to just set up pseudo checkmate or checkmate with what the cards in his hand, not checkmate on the board because that's impossible
Yes.
for this turn. But I don't know. There's an energy, there's lightning energy. There might be a fire as well. So we'll see. Oh, never
And we
mind.
do see the escape rope, which is perfect in this scenario because then Joe can save a gust if Dan tries to go into a Sableye or something to extend the game.
Yeah, this is very good. Joe has the escape rope and a switch in his hand, so he's going to be able to put this Arceus right back in the active. He has an energy to pitch for the Revovrum's ability, and he gets to take that one prize card needed to set up this essentially checkmate play that we've been talking about.
Absolutely, because I don't think we've seen maybe a single boss in Joe's discard, which means he will have an opportunity to gust pretty readily. And now I think we see the lightning attachment onto the Rayquaza V, and then we have 2 fire in hand to then draw 6 cards with the Reverum, or 5 cards, excuse me. That engine is paying off right there.
One thing to note is we have seen a lot of fire energy from Joe. I'm not sure how many
I believe he plays 8.
eights,
And
because there were three. There were 3 on each Arceus, and then 1 in the discard pile. 2, and I think the fire energies are.
With the 1 in his hand, I agree. I think we are kind of plumb out of fire energy. But Joe is shoving that 1 from his hand back into his deck with Iono, or at the bottom of his deck. And then Arceus will be able to accelerate it out onto the Rayquaza. And so at this point, I think what Joe wants is a Radiant Charizard to bench to Magma Basin 2, so that way you can keep your Charcadet out of Sableye range. Unfortunately. And this is, I think, the thought process Joe is going through right now is, do I keep Armarouge safe, or do I get the energy ready for Rayquaza to attack? Counterpoint, he just drops a Path to the Peak. I did not expect that play.
Yeah, Joe could be thinking that putting Dan at a low hand size in combination with all the energies that have been lost zoned or that are in the discard pile still, because Dan did have to Super Rod prior to playing Mirage Gate in order to secure the Psychic and Grass energy onto that Giratina V-Star. So Joe could just be thinking that Dan doesn't have access to the extra energy, or if Dan does have access to that singular energy, he won't have much of a counterplay or follow-up play on the last turn to close out the game.
Very true. And if Joe has another Iono available, he could Iono Dan to 1 following this knockout on Arceus if Dan's able to do so.
Looking at Dan's hand, it didn't look like it had much going on in it. Because he had a lot of Colress in his hand prior to the Iono, so I don't think he had a chance of really drawing one off of that. But that is the last. There is an energy there.
There is. And we are just going to see the lost impact. So we are going to see. It looks like then we may be in time since we're seeing the 1, 2, and 3 here. So Joe really just needs to take a knockout here.
Right.
And he needs to figure out how he could reach that. And this is where I don't know if I love the path play by Joe because it kind of negates his ability to accelerate energy and set up for that knockout. What do you think here though?
I think that it would have been better to play this path in the final turn had you not been able to get the knockout. I think that Joe severely limited his ability to close out the game on this turn, especially if you're Joe, especially if you know.
That's their life count. That's their prize count.
Oh, prize counting. Okay, I appreciate that.
Okay, never mind. That changes. I was gonna say if had we been in time, which we're not,
Right.
that Joe could have held this path to make sure he doesn't lose the game instead play for the tie. Not that ties are particularly great in a league challenge, but since
True.
that's not the case, I still think it would have been better to just hold the path in your hand to begin with and give yourself the chance, or a better chance at least, to win the game on this turn. Especially if Joe's been keeping track of Dan's hand from this previous turn, you know he attached an energy from his hand. So he started with 3 cards, drew 1, played the heavy ball. So you know one of the cards in his hand's a Sableye, because that's what he got off the Suicune heavy ball.
Yep.
And then you know that he attached 1, which means he has 2 mystery cards in his hand before he took 2 prizes. But
Yep.
actually, it's only 1 mystery card because he knew it was a Comfy, not Sableye. So you only know
Right.
1 card he knew he had in his hand plus 2 prizes.
Yep.
So you know that he's either heavily banking off his prizes or top deck or both in order to close out the game.
Absolutely. And I don't mind the Iono here anyway, though, because even if it's 1 mystery card, tell Dan he has to take 1 more mystery card, and that's it. That's
Yeah.
all he gets.
I mean, now he needs Mirage Gate, or he needs a lot. I don't even know what he could get because he's down so many energies too.
Well, and this is the issue, though. I agree from putting Dan into a poor position, this is effective, but now Joe is stuck because he has no energy on the board. He's not even in a position where he's able to 2-shot this Giratina V-Star.
Right.
And I think this is I've said it before, like a playing to win versus playing to lose. I think last turn Joe played to avoid the loss, even though the game wasn't on board for Dan. And now Joe's kind of facing the consequences of it because he doesn't have the ability to like advance his game. We do see Radiant Charizard come down, which is good, but unfortunately, he still doesn't have the Magma Basin to utilize it.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a stalemate at the moment. Dan's down a lot of energies, at least a Super Rod. Plays 2 Super Rod, but no other energy recovery. So Dan's only win condition might be Sableye at this point. I don't know because he's down 1, 2. All of his energies are gone because the
Well-
last prize is a water energy.
So if you're Joe in this case, I don't see why you don't advance the Ray V because you're going to be attacking and taking damage. And if Dan takes a knockout on anything, he wins the game. He's down to 1 prize. And I think Joe does decide to take that route, which I agree with because an attack is the game winning for Dan anyway. The game winner for Dan, jeez. And we do see Dan have to choose to get rid of another energy or Giratina V. But now we'll see, can he just access Cramorant again? That's really the question. Because he just needs to take a single prize here. So if you're Dan, aside from finding Cram, what do you think you're trying to do this turn?
I feel like if Cram doesn't come naturally to you, you almost want to conserve your resources. Joe is not going to apply enough pressure this next turn or the next few turns without using Magma Basin. So it's weird. I'm not entirely sure because I don't know how much damage Joe can outright do at this point.
So right now he can do 40 with Dragon Pulse. And as much as you hate to see the boss go away, that's actually not that bad of a discard because you definitely don't want to research at this point. And you're probably not gusting up all too much.
Right. Looking at Dan's deck, I don't see a single energy in there. I see a jet energy.
And I do see the Super Rod, but I don't see any Cramorants. I don't see Sableye. And I think Dan has a Mirage Gate in hand. So he's probably got 1 attack left, which to be fair is all he needs.
True. He only needs one attack, but so he needs to hit Super Rod and the Jet Energy before Joe hits. I don't even know. Like I don't even know what Joe can hit because he needs Magma Basin. He needs extra energies for the Rayquaza. He needs to gust up the Giratina V-Star, all before Dan finds a way to take one prize card.
Well, and I said it wasn't a huge deal he got rid of boss. Joe needs one boss remaining because if he is able to find a magma basin and a boss after knocking out this Comfy, he will be able to win the game just by gusting up another Comfy or something like that and using a single energy attack with Rayquaza V. Just for those listening, Rayquaza V has two attacks. First is Dragon Pulse, where for a lightning energy, you do 40 damage, discard the top two cards of your deck. The second attack, I do not remember the name of, but what it basically says is for a lightning and a fire, you can choose to discard up to 2 fire or lightning energy from this Pokemon, and this attack does 20 damage plus 80 more for each you discard. So what this means for Joe is he can Dragon Pulse his Comfy, take the knockout, and then if he's able to find either a single fire or Magma Basin and a boss, he will win the game next turn by gusting up basic V or a basic Pokemon. It looks like Joe has Magma Basin in hand. And to this I say, why not drop it? Are you worried about the Greninja draw? Like, what do you think Joe is scared of giving Dan at this point?
Well, yeah, I think I agree with dropping it. I just think he's trying to figure out what's his play after dropping it, because if this Comfy goes down, Dan, I think he's fearful that he leaving this Rayquaza V in the active, it's just going to get knocked out, and then if he puts, yeah,
Lose an
it's
S-Ball.
tough.
Okay, and an Arceus. Those are perfectly fine discards for Joe. And agreed, I understand the concern there. The one thing that Dan has going for him, for better or for worse, is that, oh, and we see the attachment from hand. So we may not see the Giratina V-Star attack here.
Well, I'm looking at his hand. I think he actually does have one energy remaining.
He does have the double gate, so he is going to be able to get and take the knockout. So, and this is where I think Joe went awry, is that by limiting his opportunity to draw through his deck to get his attackers going, he gave Dan a chance to climb back into the game.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's just how strong Giratina V-Star was there. It was one attacker that took, what,
4 prizes?
4 prizes at the expense of 3 energies.
Yes.
Which in the battle of resources that Dan had to go for with the way look at his lost zone. He has so many energies in there just trying to get to the point of attacking
Yes.
with the Giratina V-Star. For one to take 4 prizes at the expense of really only 2 energy, because 2 only hit the lost zone, the rest are
Really?
recoverable.
Yeah.
That was all that he really needed to put himself in a position to use his literally the remaining resources to win the game. He took his last Super Rod and his last 2 Mirage Gates to close out that game.
And I expect we're going to see more of the Lost Zone Tina over the course of the day because it is such a strong deck right now. And it really has all the pieces it needs to handle almost any deck in the metagame.
Right. Arceus has made a strong return since NEIC. Urshifu and Teleon has made a strong return, or strong statement because of NEIC. And
Absolutely.
those are 2 decks that Giratina V-Star with Star Requiem and Lost Impact can handle pretty easily.
All right,
I
let's do a buy,
completely
sell,
agree.
trade out.
And so we're going to go to just a quick break here. But first, we at Nerd Rage Gaming love Pokemon, in case you haven't noticed, since we're talking all about it right now. So we would love to bring in your cards, buy your cards, trade for your cards. We love to get singles here. We currently have 37 Masters. Is it 37? No, we have 40 Masters right now in the building trying to buy singles and get stuff. So we would love to fill our case to get some cards back out to community. And we also sell all the sealed products you would want for Paldea Evolve, Scarlet and Violet, anything you're looking to get your hands on, we should have here at Nerd Rage. So please come in. We'd love to see you. We'd love to sell and trade. So we will be back in just a couple minutes and jump into our second round here. Thank you all very much. Welcome back, everyone, to the Nerd Rage Gaming League Challenge. We had a very interesting round 1 to one very quick and then one grounded out game. And now we have another matchup here with Quinn playing Chien-Pao versus Chris playing Lost Zone Box. So Frank, tell us a little bit about what Chien-Pao does. I'll talk a little bit about Lost Zone and then how this matchup is going to play out.
Yeah, so Chien-Pao, at the start of Paldea Evolved, it was written off. It was called Blue Maridon, which is kind of funny to me. But it's actually very powerful, especially in this meta that we're gravitating towards with Arceus. Seems a lot of decks are starting to do better because Arceus does better. But yeah, Chien-Pao's ability, Shivery Chill, you can search 2 water energy out of the deck, and then its attack for 2 water, 60 times the amount of water energy you discard from the entirety of your board. And then you obviously have Baxcalibur, which allows you to accelerate more than just 1 energy a turn. You can do as many as you want. So Quinn's going to be looking to hit those big numbers against most decks. However, not really against Lost Box.
And that, I think, is an interesting thing because when Arceus becomes more popular, decks like Chien-Pao, like Giratina become popular and better.
Mm-hmm.
But Lost Zone Box actually struggles a bit with the matchup. So Lost Zone Box on Chris's end, it's what you guys have seen probably a few times. You use Comfy, Chorus's Experiment, etc. to just build up cards in the Lost Zone. And that enables you to use cards like Cramant to attack for free if you have 4 in the Lost Zone, Sableye to place 12 damage counters if you have 10 in the Lost Zone, and it also lets Chris use Mirage Gate to set up a variety of different attackers. And Chris right now looks like he's starting with Battle VIP in hand and just he's getting ready.
Yeah, no, Battle VIP Pass, great start. Chris is playing the Turbo version of Lost Box. Though this is, I'm pretty sure, just looking at it from a glance, the same 60 cards that Victor Ong played to get top 8 at NEIC. Coincidentally, also the deck I've been playing a lot, so I'm very familiar with this list. So this deck, in mind practice for me, seems to have a pretty decent time against Chien-Pao, depending on how explosive their turn 2 is. So this turn, Chris is going to be looking to ideally get to 2 to 3 cards in the Lost Zone. That's a good spot to be at for Lost Box decks when they go first without playing a Colress, because it means that a turn 2, 7 in the Lost Zone, Dragonite Attack, Greninja are all well within reach. If Quinn is able to get down a Manaphy, which he does play in his deck, then Chris would even be looking to potentially find a Sableye, depending on the amount of Frigibacks that come down on Quinn's board.
Absolutely. Baxcalibur is my boy in the Scarlet and Violet video game, so I was very excited to see him be good. And on the note with the Frigibacks, Quinn's deck really is going to set up, like you said, that stage 2 Baxcalibur to flood energy on the board, and it enables attackers like Chien-Pao, which will do far more damage than he needs to against all the low HP guys on Chris's board, but it also enables cards like Radiant Greninja to attack again and again and again. And on the note, though, of that Frigibax, I'm a little curious about why Quinn benched that Frigibax in the first place. Because now, unfortunately, this kind of opens up a play for Chris to play an escape rope and have Quinn be required to play a few more cards and even not even use Shivery Chill next turn if he doesn't have an energy or a switch card available.
Right, not being able to use Shivery Chill is unfortunate. One potential idea I could have for why Quinn benched Frigibacks is because he could have predicted that Chris would want to play down some escape rope this turn and would like to present a 1 prize threat as opposed to a Chien-Pao. Maybe Chris could use all of his escape ropes this turn and then his switch cards next turn and take a 2 prize knockout on the Chien-Pao instead of a 1 prize knockout on a Frigibax. It's a very complex and highly unlikely thought process.
Yes.
But he could just be trying to put Chris onto an odd price trade off the rip.
That is a big brain move. Because to me, the general approach is unless you need to bench it, especially when you're not able to do anything with the Pokemon, you don't especially want to bench it turn 1, with the exception being Spiritomb.
Right. All right, so looking at Chris's first turn, pretty solid. I think he got to at least 2 in the Lost Zone. One of those Lost Zones being a choice of Lightning Energy or Lightning Energy, so a little unfortunate considering that this Turbo Lost Box deck plays 4 Water, 2 Lightning, and 2 Psychic Energies.
Ooh.
So you're already limiting yourself to that 1 Psychic Energy or 1 Lightning Energy. On a positive note, however, that Lightning Energy just got put on the bottom of the deck, which means if Chris were looking to use a Dragonite attack this upcoming turn, he would not have to worry about drawing into it off any incoming flower selectings.
Absolutely. And on Quinn's side, it looks like he does get the Arceus V down. Quinn is using the Arceus V Star as a mechanism to really set up his board, get the game going, and he does find the Battle VIP. I assume you're getting a Greninja and another Frigibax, or some combination of cards with Manaphy, and we do see the Manaphy. I think Quinn's banking on the fact that Chris really isn't going to be able to play Boss and Colress, so his 1 Frigibax is probably safe.
Yeah, I think this one Frigibax should be safe. it's going to take a lot out of Chris to get to that 10 in the lost zone because he spread the cards out for us. It is only 2. So it's going to take a lot. Additionally, putting Manaphy down here off this Battle VIP pass, I feel, is better than putting down a second Frigibax because if Chris were to get to that 2 or 7 in the lost zone and use Radiant Greninja's Moonlight Shuriken attack, Quinn would be giving Chris both 2 prizes and disrupting any potential comeback from Quinn on the following turn.
And I would absolutely agree with that. The Greninja Snipe is a much bigger threat than Sableye right now.
Indeed.
And Chris, also, just as a side note, I really appreciate you laying out the Lost Zone cards. We can see what they are. Thank you. Please, everyone, replicate that in the future. Much appreciated. So Quinn is continuing to play through his turn here. I would almost want to see another Frigibax come down in this situation, though.
Yeah, up this nest ball, there isn't really much else you need. You might as well make yourself Sableye proof. Actually, that's not Sableye proof because that's the 60 HP Frigibax.
It is, which is interesting. I feel like the gold standard is typically the 70 HP, unless people really want the pretty 60 HP.
Yeah, I'm not very sure. I think both are good because the 70 HP one has 2 retreat, which is really bad.
True.
And the 60 HP has 1 retreat, which is really good. But the 60 HP has 60 HP, which is really bad. And 70 HP is really good. So it just depends on what you want. I think there's merit to both. I think 60 HP in a best of 1 is probably better because you want to be able to get to that Shivery Chill turn 1, thin your deck, use Radiant Greninja, etc.
And that's a fair point. And this may be an interesting topic as we get through the day. There is a legitimate difference between a best of 1 deck and a best of 3 deck.
Mhm.
Ideally, you want a consistent deck overall, but you can have a bit of like a flip flop or a mishap when you're playing best of 3, as long as you win the other 2. But in best of 1, this one's all you got.
Right. One deck that I think thrives in a best of 3 setting is Gardevoir.
Yes.
Gardevoir is very strong, arguably the best deck in the format, if not, or at least tied for best deck. But it bricks. I'd say it bricks more than like Lost Box decks do, because people say Lost Box bricks. You don't draw your Colress, blah blah blah. But decks like Turbo, which are just meant to hit 7 in the Lost Zone on turn 1 or turn 2, I think decks like this don't brick. There have been arguments that like Lost Box Teen is a better deck, that Lost Box with other partners have been better in the past, but decks that just always get to 7 on turn 2 are pretty good in best of 1.
Absolutely. And the issue too with Lost in Box and Best of 3 is that the games themselves, even though they say it's turbo, the amount of actions you have to take as a part of that turbo take a substantial amount of time.
Yeah.
So it's hard to fit in 3 full games in 50 minutes.
You may go turbo, but you still turbo in 30 minutes, not in 10 minutes.
Exactly. And it looks like Chris is getting rid of Sableye and Forest Sealstone. Ooh. That's a little painful. Not the Sealstone. He's fine to see that go since he just used the ability, but Sableye is, I think, definitely something you'd want to keep.
Yeah, Sableye's pretty tough. I think Chris is thinking, because in this matchup, usually I wouldn't say that after turn 1 or 2, Quinn's board never really gets filled ever again. That was hard to say for some reason. So Raikou is going to become a very good attacker, actually, because Chris is probably going to knock out this Chien-Pao or the RCS at some point, and after that, Quinn is going to want to replace the Chien-Pao with another Chien-Pao or the RCS with another attacker, because at the moment, as long as Chris finds access to Manaphy, the only 2 attackers Quinn has available are RCS and Chien-Pao.
Absolutely. Well, he also does have Baxcalibur as an attacker. And I think if you're able to set up 2, which hopefully he can for Quinn's sake, with those 2 Frigibacks on board, he would be able to use 1 to really offset that prize trade, because Baxcalibur does have 160 health.
Yeah, it is going to be a very difficult threat to remove, as it's also weak to metal, I believe. So it can't even be checked by that by the Raikou easily. But we do see Chris grabbing Sableye off of Arzon.
Ooh,
He's currently at 5 in the Lost Zone. Still has 2 Comfeys, and then Lost Vacuum. Now the Turbo deck does play 3 copies of Lost Vacuum, and with that Artizone and Forest Sealstone in play, Chris could just only need to use this singular flower selecting and get to that 10 in the Lost Zone through 2 Lost Vacuum.
Did he see a vacuum off of that flower selecting? Because that could be huge.
So yeah, there's already Mirage Gate in the hand. I think it was Mirage Gate and Lost Vacuum, or that's a Super Rod. I really can't tell. Come on, show us. That's a Super Rod. Yeah, because the Super Rod. So that was Super Rod or Mirage Gate.
And if everyone watching at home says Chris looks very perplexed while playing this deck, Chris did mention to us that this will be the 5th game he has played with the deck. So always a little aggressive to put that on stream, but Chris is an excellent player who's been playing for a while, so anytime we have a good chance to showcase a local player who's very talented, like we want to take that opportunity.
Of course, yeah.
And so we are going to go into the last comfy, and that is a gate and a heavy ball, I believe.
Yeah, these last ones have been pretty tough because I'm not sure. I don't think this heavy ball is too.
Ooh, maybe
Oh, that
it
was a rope.
is.
It was
It's
a
a
rope and
rope.
a heavy ball. Okay, the rope is pretty solid here. I don't know what's in the prizes. I think Dragonite could be in the prizes if he's trying to keep heavy ball. I don't really see, or Manaphy. I don't really see any other two Pokemon that would warrant uh, keeping heavy ball,
True.
especially because we know that one Sableye is on the bench and one's in the Lost Zone already.
And Chris, with that, does get to 7 in the Lost Zone, it looks like. So I think, and actually, I like this. Do I like this decision? I actually don't think I like this decision by Quinn if he knows he has access to ability to set up a Baxcalibur. Because at this point, I would almost rather you send up the Manaphy to get knocked out and then try to set up your Baxcalibur, because then you're saying that you're spending a large attack with a 2-prizer to knock out a Manaphy, and I'm going to negate the effectiveness of your Radiant Greninja for the rest of the game. But what do you think in this situation? What would have been better to send up there?
Hmm. Well, I think it's fine to send up the Frigibacks. Your Frigibacks, both Frigibacks are only in danger if Chris hits Sableye, and Chris hitting Sableye doesn't get any easier by promoting Frigibacks. So I
True.
think that that's what Quinn is playing to. Manaphy still not having to recover Manaphy this turn seems pretty nice. Uh, but I don't know. This is a pretty rough turn from Chris. I'm still trying to digest it all. It seems like he was a card or two short from getting to that 10 in the Lost Zone to be able to Sableye, and now it's going to be on Quinn to respond with a pretty explosive 2-prize knockout.
And with the Ultra Ball, he is going to be able to get the Arceus V-Star, which just alone could get him the Baxcalibur. But I think I would have loved to see the Radiant Greninja ability and Shivery Cold prior to using that Ultra Ball. Because if he did draw into Rare Candy or something like that, then
Mhm.
he'd be able to use the Ultra Ball just to get the Baxcalibur straight onto the board and save his V-Star for later down the line.
I agree. I feel like we talk about this every week. We talk about Arceus V-Star, Starbirth sequencing.
Yes,
It's
every time.
it's something that goes overlooked by many players on the media. They say Arceus is easy, but as we see time and time again, players can continue to optimize the path they take each turn, especially on turns with Arceus V-Star. So just to talk about what Dan was saying again, by removing both two water energy from your deck, seeing two more cards, and delaying your Starbirth, you have the chance to draw far more combinations of cards that could be strong this turn. For instance, like you said, Quinn could have just drawn Rare Candy Baxcalibur. Quinn could have drawn Irida. Quinn could have drawn, if he plays Cross Switcher, which I'm checking right now.
Does not look like he does.
No, it does not play Cross Switcher, but had he drawn Skater's Park, like there are a lot of cards that Quinn could draw to preserve the resources on his board, as well as to further the amount of resources he's able to see, because Quinn does play Skater's Park. So if Quinn chooses to attack with Radiant Greninja this turn, which I would be a fan of, then
I would agree.
then he could use Skater. He could have drawn into a Skater's Park, recover the 2 energy from Chien-Pao, which requires less energies to be drawn off of. Uh, like he could preserve a superior energy retrieval. So there's a lot of things he could have done to see more cards to optimize his play. That's all I'm trying to get at.
If it helps, he does have Skater's Park in hand already.
Oh,
So that's definitely an advantage.
well,
And I do, and this is where I think Chris, not to say could bait Quinn into this, but I think if Quinn goes in, and Quinn does decide to go with the Greninja Snipe, and I love this play because, as a very astute commentator noted, Chris doesn't have Manaphy on board. So Chris now has a risk of getting Greninja sniped for Sableye and a Comfy, and then it could just happen all over again if Chris doesn't bench Manaphy. And I appreciate Quinn taking out Sableye just to make sure he eliminates that threat for the next turn.
right, yeah, that was a very good turn from Quinn. Chris is not totally out of it though. If Chris is
Absolutely.
able to find this Sableye, then alright, two things to note first from Quinn's turn. The first thing is Quinn plays one copy of Lost City, just kind of mentioning what that player in the chat was talking about. So Quinn only plays one Lost City. He does one Canceling Clone, but no Cross Switchers. So it's going to be, in my opinion, rather difficult for Quinn to find this play on any following turn now that Starbirth has been used. So I think this is a pretty good turn for Chris to bench Manaphy. Ideally, because Chris is playing this Oh, see, this is what I'm about to talk about. Chris plays boss's orders in his deck, and with the amount of bench Pokemon still available, Chris can boss and knock out that Baxcalibur.
And this was something where another reason for feeding the Manaphy rather than the Frigibax is if you feed Chris the Manaphy, he could technically still knock out the Frigibax, but you give yourself an opportunity to play around a play like that from Chris. And this is where, as you mentioned, Chris is new playing the deck, but Chris is an excellent player and kind of read that by getting rid of the Frigibax and not benching another one, Quinn kind of overextended himself where now he was like vulnerable to that disruptive knockout.
Right. On Quinn's previous turn, he did elect to grab the Bidoof instead.
Yes.
So that could have also just been an oversight on his part, not knowing that Chris's list plays boss and anticipating that this Baxcalibur would be safe for the majority of the game, or at least until a position where he no longer needs it.
And the other thing that was a risk is that Quinn did decline to accelerate water energy to anywhere else on the board. And he did have superior energy
Is
retrieval
he
available.
gonna grab that water energy off Skaters Park?
That
Is it optional?
It is not. Bryce, can you
Because
stagger
that has
real
to go in
quick?
the bottom of the deck.
Yeah.
So, because if he nest balls, this is bad.
Yes.
Please stop him. Please stop him. Please stop him. Please stop him.
If he can always just shuffle it back into the deck if he does play the nest ball.
Oh, true.
So it's not catastrophic, but do we decide it was optional? I'm gonna Google that right quick, but regardless, we note this almost every time. This is why we have the commentators interact with the players as necessary, because we want to make sure that the game state is protected all throughout these kinds of tournaments. Skaters Park.
It says put any. It
Google.
doesn't say you may put any.
Ah, okay. Bryce, would you mind, please? I didn't even know that should go in the deck.
And then to shuffle the deck, because I'm
Yes.
pretty sure that's an appropriate resolution.
And I think Quinn did shuffle the deck for the Chien-Pao search before drawing anything straight from the deck.
But
So
the problem is that energy could have been grabbed off Shivery Chill, which
Yes.
is fine. He could just grab it, but it's just unfortunate. All we had to do was take a glance at the card and read the card, as opposed to saying,
So does it say? I thought you said that it did not say may. It just says put.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't say may. I'm looking at the card right now, and it says put.
Yep, that is correct. Fun fact: played that deck in Shadow Rider briefly, and that was an interaction you had to be careful for because you could reduce your damage output. Thank you, Bryce, for checking on that. Everyone, let's please celebrate Bryce for keeping our game states alive and healthy throughout these tournaments. Thank you, Bryce.
Yeah, that's perfect, because now the game state's not disrupted to a point where we can't recover.
Exactly.
Worst case scenario is there's a water energy in the deck, and Quinn only grabbed one off Shivery Chill, which
Yes.
is not a big deal. But Quinn couldn't do much of anything in response this turn. And now there's only one Frigibax on the board again, and there's a Bidoof on the board that has 60 HP as well.
Yes.
So Chris has a chance to just put himself into a position where Quinn can't recover.
So the one advantage that Quinn does have is Chris did not put any cards in the lost zone last turn because he played the boss's orders.
Mhm.
The disadvantage Quinn has is if Chris just benches another Pokemon, he could also just straight up knock out this Chien-Pao with Raikou.
Right.
And at that point, Chris is down to two prizes remaining with a 2-prize V-Star on the board. And does Chris play Choice Belt?
No, he doesn't play Choice Belt. However, Chris does play Palpad.
Ah,
So Palpad could be used to recycle that boss's orders, which means that all it would take from Chris is a Sableye at some point to set up numbers, and then a boss's
absolutely.
orders onto that Arceus V-Star to close out the game.
Or, like you said, Chris could take this opportunity to Sableye, knock out Frigibax and Bidoof, and just keep the Chien-Pao on board and use the Raikou or Dragonite in a following turn to take that boss knockout.
I'm fond of that play, especially since Chris is using Colress this turn.
Yes.
You can...
Counterpoint, you just straight up bench the Dragonite.
Right, this
Sure.
Dragonite is also... It's likely to go unchecked. Chris is going to eliminate the only attacker capable of one-shotting the Dragonite, the source of water energies in Quinn's deck, and force Quinn to have Rare Candy, Baxcalibur, all that, plus a boss to even touch the Dragonite. So I like this play a lot, preemptively benching it. Makes yourself Iono-proof. Quinn does
True.
play 2 copies of Iono. It just means you have to hit a little bit less on the next turn.
Quinn has played 2 Iona this game, so I think there's no more disruption. But from Chris's end, you have to bank on him playing more than 2. So I agree. Chris is playing around that well. And the other thing is, I agree, knocking out the source of all energy. But like you mentioned too, Quinn had discarded Chien-Pao earlier in the game when Ultra Balling from his hand. So now he may still have one in deck, but there's less accessibility to directly draw into it.
I think on his previous turn, he might have super rotted it in.
Oh,
I
did
know
he do so?
I know 2 Frigibacks came back into the deck. I saw a shiny card, so I'm assuming it
I
was
think
the
it was
Chien-Pao.
the Baxcalibur.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
2 Frigibacks and a Baxcalibur. All right, and we do see Chris take the knockout here, which I don't mind. And now if it's me, I agree, Quinn. Now is the opportunity to Greninja Snipe to Comfy and not put down of Chien-Pao. And say to Chris, you have to take 2 prizes next turn, or I'm going to maybe do so with Arceus, the Chien-Pao I bench fresh, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I like this play. Um,
We are seeing. Oh, we're failing 2 nest balls. Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
so looking at Quinn's hand, there's an Irida and a pair of energy, and I think a Battle Pass. In terms of sequencing, I like to see Chris or Quinn first rating Greninja to hit Rare Candy or Superior Energy Retrieval.
Or
Neither.
neither.
Or neither. So now, if I'm Quinn, I think you have to grab Ultra Ball and Baxcalibur and try and hit off Bidoof. But one thing I'm curious about is Quinn failed to Nest Ball and then just drew a Frigibax. So, maybe should have thinned that card. Let's see what the last card is, just out of curiosity.
So
It was a Superior Energy Retrieval, which
the
is
other
funny.
thing with failing those 2, I don't really mind getting the Baxcalibur here either. Really, he just needed to get whichever he had least of in the deck and
Right.
hope and draw into the other.
Yeah.
So the one thing I would say too for Quinn's turn here is I I would prefer to see him have kept at least one of those nest balls because you will have to find a Chien-Pao next turn to be able to ideally reach for a knockout on the Dragonite if Chris goes up with it.
Right.
So by failing those, if Chris does disrupt his hand, and most Lost Zone box are playing Roxanne, then Quinn would have much less access to being able to find a ooh.
That's bad.
That is not great.
That's not great at all.
That's not great.
Yeah, Quinn needed a lot this turn. I was talking about that when Chris benched the Dragonite. He was playing safer for his board,
Mm-hmm.
as well as still forcing Quinn to need the same amount, if not more, to even have a shot in this game. Now at this point, I think all Chris needs to do is further his hand and then make sure he has a counterplay on the following turn, whether it be in terms of using escape ropes to get out of a potential Arceus V-Star promotion. There's a lot that Chris could do this turn.
Absolutely. And for Quinn, he just has to hope to be able to set up Excalibur, knock out Raikou with Arceus, and then pray that Chris doesn't have a forced switch and the Mirage Gates onto Dragonite.
An interesting play we could see. Chris was just reading Skater's Park. He could retreat the water energy off of the Raikou. Actually, no. He would have to retreat the lightning energy off the Raikou in order
'Cause he
to
has
attack with
lost on one
Dragonite.
of
Because he
them,
has
yep.
lost on one. I was about to say he could just have enough energies to attack with Dragonite through that, but I don't even think attacking with Dragonite is the optimal choice in this situation, especially because that lightning energy needs to hit the discard pile.
I think setting up multiple water on Dragonite is not a bad idea, or setting up his board to be able to hit with Dragonite next turn. But to be honest, all he's really going to need once he takes this knockout is a single Sableye and a Psychic Energy on the board to take a knockout on that Bibarel, or Manaphy, or anything else.
Right.
So Chris, and to Chris's credit, has played himself into an advantageous position after a somewhat weak start, taking advantage of maybe a little bit of overextension or
Right.
not looking for weaknesses in the game plan on Quinn's end.
Right. In terms of overextension, a thing common among people is when you're winning, sometimes you just play cards that are win more cards, or you play cards for no purpose because you think you can't get punished, and sometimes you have to think a number of turns ahead, or you have to think what's the smallest chance I have of losing this game, and play to that conservative strategy as opposed to being over aggressive. And like you said, from Chris gave himself a number of different ways to put himself back into the game.
Yes.
And whenever Quinn gave him the window for one of those opportunities, Chris was able to take advantage of that and is now at one prize card.
Absolutely. And that one prize card, I think, is going to be the difference maker because no longer do you need a boss, no longer do you need a belt, anything like that. All you really need at this point is a rope.
Right.
And you're going to have the game in hand. And so, talking about that for Quinn, and kind of that playing just to play, I think the most nervous moment I have as a player is when I'm in the lead and I feel myself go like, "Sweet, this is easy. I got this." And that's a red flag for me of, okay, reel it back, calm down. Am I playing cards in the right order? Is there something I'm not missing? Am I just feeling too good about the game to be engaged in the game and
Hmm.
see what's happening?
You're right. We're looking at
What
another thing of sequencing is I don't know if Chris Quinn has used Bidoof yet, but oh, interesting.
he has not, and that is a Starmie.
That's a Starmie V. I also still don't. Maybe there is one, but I haven't. I don't see a rare candy for Baxcalibur still.
I
Maybe it's in the hand. Maybe it's top decked. Didn't really get a good look at his hand. We've kind of been focusing on the lead up to this turn, but
yes.
Quinn has a chance to climb back in this game. But it really just I guess depends on what Chris has in his hand.
So, and I wonder, benching the Starmie is interesting if he does so. You're right. I don't see a rare candy. Did he decline to take a rare candy?
I feel I'm so confused because I feel like Quinn could have just held this Irida, drawn what I believe is two cards off of
So, oh, it's
like
raining.
he would have hit it.
Ooh.
I'm so confused.
I'm also confused
thinking
on
of a
what
different
the
place.
game plan was there because we do see superior energy retrievals, but we didn't hit the rare candy. And
I saw one in the deck because I saw him thumb one to the front.
yeah, agreed. And was there a reason why he didn't want to attack with Arceus this turn? Because now at this point, all Chris needs is an energy to retreat, and that's the game. So unfortunate end for Quinn here. Definitely some curiosity, and we'll talk to him after the game about
Hmm.
why he took some of those routes. But credit to Chris for taking himself from a not
Oh
great
yeah,
position into a very secure winning position.
yeah. Chris played very well. Played like I said, he opened up many different ways for him to climb back into the game, which is what great players do.
Absolutely. So then we're going to jump
No
over.
backup.
All right, we are not going to look our backup game because there was a clear win by Michael over there, taking down the Rapid Strike box. So instead, we're just going to talk a little bit about some of the upcoming events we have here at Nerd Rage Gaming. So, like we said, tonight is our League Challenge night. We have 40 Masters, which is incredible. And we love seeing this many people out and playing. So it's great to have them. And every Thursday night, even if we don't have a League Challenge, we do have Pokemon Trading Card Game. It's a great league. We usually have anywhere from like 15 to 25 people, and it's a very friendly, positive community. We'd love to welcome you out here. It's a great place to build some relationships. And whenever we can, we're streaming, and you're going to get to maybe see yourself or one of your friends play on stream. Otherwise, too, at Nerd Rage, we have Magic, we have Digimon, we have One Piece, anything else you'd want to come play. So we'd love to see you out here, and then we're going to take a quick break and get everyone set up for the next round. Welcome back, everyone, to the Nerd Rage Gaming July League Challenge. Here we have two players, Sky, playing one of the weirder decks we're going to see today, versus Miguel playing a very not weird deck. So, Frank, can you tell us a little bit about the build that Miguel is playing, the more of the straightforward Gardevoir?
Yeah, so Miguel's playing a very typical Gardevoir list. Obviously, you've got Mew, you got Cresselia. In terms of one-ofs, obviously everybody knows Ralts, Kirlia, the Shining Arcana Gardevoir, and the X. But in terms of one-ups and backup attackers, you have Zacian V, Cresselia, Mew, your standard. You got Greninja for consistency, Manaphy, blah, blah, blah. One card of note, or two cards of note, I guess, are Miguel plays 11 Psychic Energy, which is something people debate over, 10 versus 11. And then another card that is notable is Miguel plays a copy of Sky Seal Stone. Personally, I am a fan of Sky Seal Stone, especially in a best of one meta, where with Arceus being popularized and Arceus being even stronger in best of one formats, Sky Seal Stone gives you that comeback potential that you, to be honest, need against Arceus decks.
And that's going to come into play really here because as you can see, Sky is starting Arceus, and Sky and Olive together have built a heck of a cool list here. So they are playing Arceus V-Star with Gardevoir EX. Wait, actually,
Yes.
yeah, they are. We're going to need to talk to them about writing down Gardevoir EX on their list. But yes, they are. So this deck is really based around using Arceus V-Star to set up your board and get your engine going. And you build an engine of Ralts, Kirlia, and Gallade in order to cycle Sharon's Care, cycle through your attackers, and then go in for a final large attack with an attacker like, a very interesting inclusion, Galarian Moltres. And Galarian Moltres' ability uses Dark Energy, lets you put it down the board with 2 Dark Energy from your hand. This is a big deal because it does 20 plus 50 for each prize your opponent's taken. So that way Sky sets it with Arceus, doing 180, 200 damage, and then has a big closer when their opponent's taken a few prizes to do 270, 220, and has that dark typing, which lets it knock out Gardevoir EX, lets it knock out Mew VMAX, and some of the other major attackers in the game. And so on Miguel's side, Miguel right now is using that Celebrations Mew to look at the top 6 cards of his deck to pull out an item card. It looks like he got the rare candy. I don't know if that's what he wanted in this situation with only 1 Ralts on board. So Frank, when you're playing Gardy, obviously you want Battle VIP, but is that the only thing you're really digging for with Mew turn 1?
Well, if you're not getting Battle VIP Pass, you're at least wanting to get a Fog Crystal or a Level Ball. Basically, the point of Mew is just to get more Ralts. And even if it's only a 1-for-1 trade, it's still a Ralts, especially against Sky, who's playing a deck that doesn't have much turn 1 aggression. An ideal turn for Sky is just going to be attach, get a bench Pokemon or 2, namely Ralts, and pass.
And I think that's exactly what we're about to see here.
Right, this looks like a pretty good turn from Sky, so can't really complain or ask for much more. Miguel's going to need a rather explosive turn, or at least just to develop his board a little bit more in order to be in a good position.
And that's one advantage, though, with Gardevoir and oftentimes Lost Box, is you are a single prize deck until you decide to not be. So Miguel can give up a prize or 2 here or there and just say, that's okay, I'm building up my board, because then, like you said, with the Sky Seal Stone, Miguel will be able to take 3 prizes on an Arceus V-Star, along with incremental prizes on Kirlias, or maybe 2-shotting an Arceus V-Star along the way. And Sky gets the double Ralts down with Arceus active, and if Miguel had a stronger board, I would feel a little bit sketchy about this, but I think Sky's making the call that with 1 Ralts down, Miguel's probably not attacking into the Arceus for any real damage this turn.
Yeah, it's basically impossible, I want to say. Miguel would need Ultra Ball away, 2 Psychic Energy twice, Radiant Greninja to trade, or concealed cards, a way to Rare Candy Gardevoir and the Zacian V. So, a lot. I don't even think going for that play in the first place is the right thing for Miguel, unless it's gifted to him in his hand. I think it's just better to develop your board, look for your level balls, your fog crystals, and a supporter to develop your board. One thing that's also important to note is Miguel plays, just looking at lists right now, Miguel plays Worker, Temple of Sinnoh, Artisan, and Collapse Stadium, and Palpad. So technically 5 outs to Path to the Peak, which Sky plays as a count of 3. I played against Sky at a previous league challenge, and Olive, both of them. And they're both playing this deck. And the one thing that this matchup was a make or break in this matchup was Path to the Peak. Against Olive, it took me a number of turns to find Path to the Peak, and so it came down to a draw off of an Iono. And then against Sky, I found my Path to the Peak counter every single turn, and the game just went out of control.
And in this scenario, I think Miguel took exactly what you said of, let's not try to high roll, let's just try to set up a little bit. But one thing he did that was interesting is he actually used Celebrations Mew to search for an item card prior to playing the Iono. And if it's me, we talked about sequencing a bunch on here today, I would have loved to see the Iono first, and then dig with Celebrations Mew, and then dig with Kirlia, but it is possible Miguel found the Kirlia found the Iono off of the initial Kirlia.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into the sequencing of that turn. The main one being you keep your Ralts in your deck, you keep your outs to Ralts in your deck to draw off that 6 from Iono. Additionally, when you refinement with Kirlia, you develop your hand size post Iono to be greater. But as you said, he could have just drawn that Iono off of the refinement, in which case that's rather unfortunate.
Yes.
If Miguel had no supporter card prior to the refinement, I actually do like using Mew and then refinement then, because that is one card you take out of your deck that heightens your chances of finding a supporter card. But Sky's having a very, very good second turn.
Guy's deck is just working. This is now an out to an Arceus V-Star, an out to a Kirlia, anything like that lets Sky draw more cards. I think that's the Ralt Sky put down this turn, but it's fine. As long as she doesn't evolve more than two, we're gonna be okay.
Right. No, yeah, it's fine. In worst case scenario, just go stop him instantly.
So discarding the Ultra Ball there is interesting because that seems like such an important out throughout the rest of the game. But sometimes you just have the Arceus V-Star in hand.
Right. Another thing to talk about is Sky chose to put down the path to the peak prior to the research, accepting that they may not have been able to Starbirth, they could have drawn a break off research, but realizing that when they're going to Power Edge and there's one measly Curlia on the opponent's side of the board, it's probably better to slow them down. Eliminate Greninja, eliminate any chance of them attacking, really.
And that's kind of the opposite of what we saw with Joe in the game earlier today.
Right.
Because Joe was in a disadvantageous position and he tried to path to stop Dan from winning, but by doing so, removed one of his opportunities to win the game. Whereas Sky is saying, exactly like you're saying, Frank, I'm okay having a slower turn myself because I'm already so far ahead on a board state that
Right.
if both of us slow down, I'm going to win that.
Right, Arceus, like on paper, everybody thinks, oh, Arceus, you path, you attack, you use disruption supporters, and that's all there is to it. But people don't think about sometimes the payoff of certain cards and the timeliness of certain cards as an Arceus deck. Like we're talking about with Joe, the timing of the path was poor because, as you said, it put him in a disadvantageous position, and he had no way of following up. The timing
Right.
of this path to the peak was strong because, if anything, it puts more pressure onto Miguel.
Exactly, because now Miguel knows he will either needs to draw one of his outs, dig for one of his outs in order
Mhm.
to attack with Gardevoir this turn. And by evolving that Shining Arcana Gardevoir, he's not going to be able to use Gardevoir EX. Now, on the bright side, it means that he doesn't need to worry about finding that stadium bounce. And for Sky, Sky can think that really she put Miguel in a spot where he just had to try to hit in with this Gardy with reversal energy or something similar.
Right. Well, another thing is sometimes when people see Path to the Peak and they know their deck is relying on bumping Path to the Peak, they get a little bit more cautious with their resources.
True.
As Miguel, I don't think you have the ability to be cautious with your resources.
Yes.
I can't really get a good look at his hand, but I just think that he needs to, like, because he could have been debating a research right then. Research could have been getting rid of a stadium, but sometimes you just, like, he might have just need to see the extra card. I don't really know what's going on with his hand because he's doing a pretty good job of hiding it from the camera.
Yes, he is.
But it's just something to think about.
And I would absolutely agree. It's again that what is the key resource I need? How am I enacting my game plan? And right now, bouncing that path, it's not really hindering the game plan. Also, Bryce, thank you for shifting the camera so we can see his hand. What Bryce just has us covered, man. And so Miguel actually does find the path bounce. And normally I would say maybe you don't waste the resource here, knowing you're going to go down.
Right.
But getting another basic down is huge for him because now he can try to keep going and accelerate his game.
Yeah, this is huge. I think, again, as we talked about, Miguel has access to Worker, Palpad, and then still 2 more stadiums in addition to this. So I think it's fine to go for this. This extra Ralts is actually very important because if Sky were to find access to a boss's orders and eliminate the Ralts, that means your other Ralts has to evolve into Gardevoir, so you can't use Refinement, which means you're limited to Shining Arcana. This way, no matter what Sky goes for on the board, Miguel should be able to at least draw 4 additional cards off of Refinement, Shining Arcana, combinations, etc. So I like this a lot from Miguel.
Absolutely. I don't mind the Palpat either, knowing with how Miguel's drawing right now and that Sky's going to take a more significant lead. Just give yourself more opportunity to find ways to slow down Sky. And also, one of the things that's important whenever you're building this like this is having the optimal cards.
Mhm.
So whether it's the optimal Curlia, playing 1 Mirage Gate, 3 Refinement, or vice versa. No, not vice versa, play 4. But with the Ralts, typically the ideal Ralts is Memory Skip, which will let you slow down your opponent, or Teleportation Burst. But Miguel has decided that he wants 4 of the beautiful ones. And to be
Mhm.
honest, I'm not offended, Miguel. Those look wonderful. So thank you for featuring them on stream. I appreciate that. Getting back to the actual game, Sky is starting to draw through her deck more significantly using those Curlias. And that is the benefit of Arceus too, is you thin energy out of your deck
Mhm.
quick.
Yeah, you get to your good cards very fast, and so with in addition to Refinement, Sky can continue to thin cards that are not very relevant to the matchup. For instance, Team Star Grunt, which I say is irrelevant to the matchup, but I don't know what it does. So I'm looking it up right
So
now.
what Team Scar Grunt does is it says take an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon and put that energy on top of their deck.
Oh yeah,
So it is
that's
technically a controlling card because you limit their attachments and you control their top deck.
right. Not very effective against Gardevoir, where it could probably just hit
Correct.
the discard pile on the following turn, but good card nonetheless. And Arceus mirrors, etc.
Sander will absolutely use that card at some point in his career, and I'm very
One
scared to
thousand
play
percent.
against him
One
when he
thousand
does.
percent.
Yes.
So looking at Sky's board, this is a very strong board.
And I don't know if she could ever want a better board than this. 2 Curlia to see 4 extra cards per turn, 2 fully loaded attackers down in Arceus V-Star, and then the is it Buddy Catch Gallade?
Buddy catch, yes.
Buddy Catch Gallade that lets you search your deck for a supporter card every turn. So Sky, every turn, is going to be able to get the supporter she needs. She's going to be able to draw multiple cards, and she already has a strong board setup of attackers. Just the engine's working.
Right. Going back to Miguel's side, one thing to also to note, talk about, etc., is in terms of that artisan and resources and having Palpata the Iono, because now Miguel has limited himself to realistically 3 path outs for 3 knockouts because it's gonna be pretty tough to get a knockout on this Arceus V Star. But there's 6 prizes on the board, and those can be taken in 3 knockouts. So Miguel still has plenty of resources to take down this game. So despite Sky's very strong board, there's not. If I'm Miguel, I'm not feeling overly threatened because I still have the prize map available.
And I don't know if I love that Mirage Gate coming down on the active spot. Because if I'm playing a Curlia down this turn, if I'm Miguel, I really want to be able to refinement. Since Mirage Step doesn't really do a ton for you right now, since at that point, Sky will go down to having 3 prizes remaining, and you're going to have to hit with a couple 2 prizes if you're Miguel to accelerate this game.
Yeah, that's a little tough. Thinking about the map from here, Miguel has a reversal energy, which is pretty good. So the way I see that Miguel gets back into this point is that next turn a reversal energy Gardevoir takes the knockout. In addition to that, Miguel needs to get a manual attachment onto another potential Shining Arcana Gardevoir.
Yes.
Then that Arcana Gardevoir needs to get to 8 energies and attack again, and then Zacian has to attack. So
Yes.
the way this is mapped out is Miguel no longer has a turn of leeway, you could call it, or that cushion of a prize card. He has to go Shining Arcana Gardevoir, Zacian V. There's no longer a mix and match of turns.
Absolutely. The one advantage, well, I shouldn't even say disadvantage. The other thing Miguel has to make sure is that he cannot hit into an Arceus V hoping to take a 2-shot.
Mhm.
Because at this point, Sky has Sharon's Care available every single turn due to that Buddy Catch Gallade.
Right.
So Miguel has to know each attack has to be a knockout, and like you said, he has 3 attacks remaining before the game is
Mhm.
over.
Yeah, and even trying to two-shot with the Gardevoir EX doesn't seem like a totally strong strategy because now that Galarian Moltres is revealed, and on top of that, Sky could just ignore the Gardevoir EX and say, I'm gonna boss and kill one prizer.
Absolutely.
So Sky's gonna be able to put on a lot of pressure for the remainder of the game. And yep, see Sky's going to 3 prizes, and now Miguel has to start thinking about how he can successfully map the rest of this game. Because if he's thinking the way that we're thinking, then he'll know that he has to take 2 prizes with his Gardevoir, 2 prizes with another Gardevoir, and close the game with a Zacian V.
Absolutely. And he could technically close with another Gardevoir, but it's going to be so hard to build the resources
Oh,
for that
it's
at that
it's
point.
gonna be incredibly difficult.
The one thing Miguel could do, again going back to having that Sky Seal Stone, is he could take a 2-prize knockout this turn. He could Gust and knock out Buddy Catch Gallade or something to inhibit Sky's draw engine next turn, or even use Cresselia to snipe a Curlia on Sky's bench, and then the following turn take a 3-prize knockout on Arceus V-Star.
That could be strong. The only problem is it gives Sky a lot of windows to just no longer give Miguel a chance. That's a
Yes.
rough Shining Arcana.
That is a horrendous Shining Arcana. Double VIP pass on turn 4, is it?
I think it's past turn
It-
4.
It is. We are past turn 1 at least. That is
Yeah,
for
that
sure.
yep.
All right, so Miguel's getting the Ultra Ball. Looks like that is the Gardevoir EX, and I assume we're either going to evolve the Curlia that already used Refinement or the Ralts on the bench with a Candy. But like you said, Miguel has his game plan. Knockout, knockout, knockout with Shining Arcana, Zacian.
Yes, and the start is this turn needs a reversal energy. and an energy on that Shining Arcana Guard on a bench Curlia
Yes.
with no damage being on that Curlia. So kind of a tall order, but we'll see.
And we do see Worker come down. So Miguel had some leeway with one of the Path to the Peaks going away, knowing Sky only plays 3. But we have now seen 3 of Miguel's 4 stadium bounces available to him used. And so now
Yeah.
he needs to conserve that collapsed stadium for when a path comes down. And the other issue is he has to make sure that that collapsed stadium does not clear his win condition from the board with bouncing an Arceus V-Star.
Yeah, this is not looking fantastic for Miguel. Additionally, does Sky still have access to 2 copies of Path or just 1 copy of Path?
I believe 2 copies because Sky has played down 1 earlier in the game, and I did not see any discarded.
So with that Buddy Catch Gallade, I believe there's still access to a research and maybe Judge, Roxanne Avery's been played. So there's a couple of draw supporters left in Sky's deck to be able to find access to to see more cards and to find Path to the Peak. So Sky could just put down Path to the Peak back-to-back turns, and Miguel cannot win the game.
Correct. And so right now Miguel is going to get 6 energy on that Shining Arcana Gardevoir, and I believe he's going to need 2 more energy or reversal energy on there. And at this point, since he hasn't attached from hand, it's going to have to be a reversal energy with Gardevoir only having 20 HP remaining.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the usage of of Psychic Embrace before you're taking a knockout. Well, obviously it has to be before you take the knockout, but
I see what you mean.
Right.
Yes.
and most people use it right before you know you're going to attack when you have no other plays to affect your decision. So it's interesting to see him do it right now and then continue to make decisions. It's also interesting to see that I don't believe a Shining Arcana has been used yet.
He did. He did use Shining Arcana and got 2 battle VIP.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was way earlier in the game. Okay, so then yeah, Miguel has to draw that reversal energy. So it's just interesting to see him place this because if you're not gonna end up achieving the knockout, then you would have to go for that longer game of using Gardevoir EX. But this is just gonna be
I think this is just going to be game here,
yeah,
unfortunately.
this is just gonna basically seal Miguel's fate. He can struggle for a couple more turns, but as long as Sky announces attacks and has energy cards in her deck, then this is actually they're not gonna be in the deck now. They're just gonna be in the hand.
And so I love the enthusiasm for Sky, but we actually talked about this with Quinn. Sky went straight for the Buddy Catch, Sharon's Care to pull the Arceus V-Star off the board, but what Sky could have done is thin some cards out of her hand, clear some stuff out, see if you draw into it organically, and then use your Buddy Catch to set up a supporter for next turn that you want, like a Boss's Orders or a Clara or something like that. Is it going to be impactful in the outcome of the game?
Probably not.
Probably not. But it could be should Miguel hit literal fire off the next couple turns or something.
Right, Miguel would need to whip out a pair of cross switchers, an Iono. I don't even know. I can't even think of a combination of cards.
Yeah,
that could
I
put
don't
him back
think
into this
Sky's actually
game.
going to get punished for it.
No, I
but
don't think so either. If anything, maybe Sky is just looking to see cards that aren't Sharon's off these refinements to trade. I don't know. I just don't see. There is no real punish for it, in all honesty.
I would agree. I would agree. And this is where watching game film, watching this stuff play out matters because agreed, there probably wouldn't be any punish. And if you just looked at this game as a result of the game, it'd be very easy to say, well, I played perfectly and
Right.
the deck functioned perfectly because we won the game. But how people improve as players is by looking at this and saying, even in a win, did I do things optimally?
Mhm.
Or in a loss, did I do everything I could and things just didn't go my way?
Mhm. Now Sky could just be thinking. Sky could be thinking of all the things that we're talking about right now, and then just have decided that the best. Her play could have just been to thin more cards from the deck, and maybe find that extra copy of Gallade in case all hell breaks loose on Miguel's turn.
Very
But
true.
I don't know. I think it's important to also discuss what is viewed as quote the optimal line in terms of sequencing, as it's something we've harped on for the past 2 rounds. So it would
Yes.
almost be a crime not to talk about it when it happens again.
Right. Well, if you're going to get anything from stream, it's going to be us talking about how sequencing is so important. Sequence well, kids. And Miguel, to his credit, we've had some questions about how he's done his decisions, but he's really tried his best to just get himself back in the game after starting at such a hard position.
Right. Yeah, as we've seen, Miguel drew 2 battle VIP passes of a Shining Arcana that was on a very crucial turn to even stay
Yes.
in the game. As we also said, Miguel could have chosen to play his search cards and draw cards in different order. We also didn't have perfect information because his hand was a little bit hidden for the beginning of the game. But
Thanks, Bryce, for correcting that.
yes. But he still has been playing to his outs.
Yes.
It just might be on a slightly indirect path.
Agreed. And unfortunately, like we said, Sky's board set up so successfully early that it was hard for Miguel to really keep pace with that. And unfortunately, all the stadium outs he found, the Artisan was helpful, but finding the collapse to turn into earlier could have been very valuable to force Sky to have less attackers ready to stream.
Right. Yeah, Miguel could have forced Sky to either get rid of refinements before Buddy Catch and before essential board checkmate had been created,
Yes.
or for Sky to be rid of an RCSV with energy on it, which would have left Sky's board with only an active attacker, which could have been the path back into the game.
Absolutely. And now at this point, having the collapsed stadium really doesn't do much because all Sky is going to do is bounce the lone RCSV and leave her draw engine and attackers on the board ready to go.
Right. I believe Sky still has access to 2 copies of Boss. So
Yes,
this
and both are
game-
actually in her hand.
right. So yeah. So this game is basically we're just delaying the inevitable, but you never know. Something could happen.
And like you said, you play to your outs, you do the best you can, and it looks like that's exactly what Miguel is trying to do, is at least put himself in a position to try to stay a part of the game.
Maybe Miguel is able to bench 4 Pokemon, or have 1 active and 3 Pokemon on the bench that do not get knocked out by an RCSV Star's attack. I don't think that's actually possible, because that would require 2 Gardevoir EX and 2 Zacian V, and there's only and another Pokemon. But
Yes.
unfortunately, Miguel only plays 2 Gardevoir EX and 1 Zacian V. So this
That,
game is just about wrapped up, and it's just on Sky to make sure she uses Boss or just attacks into this Gardevoir, because that's a 1 prize or 2.
And you always wonder about the retreat there, but that is exactly what Sky is doing, is setting up the follow-up attacker with the Galarian Moltres, and Sky will put that down from her hand, use the ability, and then manually attach an energy to it. So now, if Sky is able to accelerate from the deck, Sky will again have 3 attackers set up in the Galarian Moltres, the Arceus V-Star in the active, and then the Arceus V-Star on the bench. And Sky just gets 2 supporters out of the deck because she has 2 Buddy Catch Glades set up and the path to the peak. This is heartbreaking for Miguel, but it is all over at this point. And so, what do you think Miguel does here? Because I just don't see an out for him.
I think you just play the last turn out and suffer an honorable fate. Sky's deck, I guess to do a little preemptive recap, Sky's deck functioned perfectly. She got RCS attachment, she got a pair of Ralts, she got double Buddy Catch Gallade,
Yes.
didn't miss a beat, forced Miguel to have it, just have it, and Miguel never had it.
He did not.
He had a Mirage Step on a turn, on what was his essential gap turn, the turn that Gardevoir usually wants to start attacking on, so that if they whiff, or so that if they're forced to attack with Zacian V, they're not in danger of losing. Alas, that didn't fall this way.
Agreed. And technically, Sky would have to discard a Pokemon from her board, but also technically, Miguel drew under path. And I think Sky is being very polite and not saying, "Sir, you have a 2 prize penalty, I win the game." Because Sky also sees the writing on the wall of,
Yeah.
I don't know what Miguel's going to do here.
And it can just be a learning experience. Like Miguel probably knows this game's over, might be a little frustrated, might just be looking for any possible out. And there's no reason for Sky to be a Grinch in this situation and take advantage of something that's ultimately unnecessary. Just treat it as a learning experience and be a friendly local opponent.
And I also think, per all of our conversations about sequencing and how you play the game, playing out these kind of competitive situations is not a bad thing. Play it to the end, have it be practice reps. See how your opponent's going through their game plan and what they're trying to do, because you can gain a lot of value from that. And I think that's what Miguel's trying to do here, is just go out on his own terms, make sure that he plays to the bitter end. And also, Miguel, just wanted to say that shirt is freaking awesome. I
It's a pretty
love
cool
it.
shirt.
It's just awesome. All right, back to the game. I think Miguel's only play here is to try to attack and take a knockout with the Zacian V, or to knock out with Shining Gardevoir or Shining Arcana, and then just kind of take the loss at that point.
Yeah, I don't see.
Oh, but I do actually see. Oh, actually, Sky does not currently take a knockout on this Gardevoir. Granted, Sky has 2 boss in hand.
Hmm.
But I think this is Miguel's plan, is to hit into the Arceus with the Gardevoir EX, knowing that Galarian Moltres doesn't take a knockout right now, and then just say, hope Sky doesn't have any bosses in her deck.
Yeah. One thing I want to make note of in terms of Miguel is, and something that we totally missed is, this is the same thing. It just forces this guy to have boss in two different ways.
Yep, and Sky just says, you aren't destructing my hand, I have game in hand. Ooh, those are not great prizes left for Miguel, too. We see Zacian and 2 draw
Yeah,
supporters.
those could have been a contributing factor to why he was not able to find any sort of response in the middle turns of that game.
Absolutely. All right, so Sky does take the win, going to 3-0 in this league challenge, and Miguel, though he had a valiant effort, is not going to be able to move to that 3-0 mark, and we'll just have to play out and hope to see where he stands at the end of the
Buy,
tournament.
sell, trade out.
And so we're going to just go quick and just a little reminder that here at Nerd Rage Gaming, we want your Pokemon cards. We would love to buy your cards, your singles, whatever you have. We want to be able to sell, provide singles for the community. So we'll also take trades, anything you want to bring in. And Nerd Rage Gaming has a ton of sealed product and singles available. So if you need some of the new Paldea Evolve set, some of the old ETBs and other cards, come in. We'd love to have you take a look at what we have and see if it fits anything you need. So we're going to take a quick break, get the next round up going, and we will talk to you all soon. Good evening and welcome back to the Nerd Rage Gaming July League Challenge. Here we have a returning player from today, Dan Ibarra, versus someone we had on backup stream multiple times, Ryan. And Ryan is playing Palkia V-Star. Yes, Palkia V-Star, like a year after it was good. While Dan, as we saw, is playing Lost Zone Giratina. So, Frank, tell us a little bit about what Palkia V-Star looks like now.
So Palkia V-Star has been Ryan and Ryan's good friend Ben Dobersey have been playing it a lot. Ben took down a League Cup with it, got second at a League Challenge with it. It's very good in best of one, especially best of one, because it just Palkia just needs two energies and an evolution, and it's attacking, which is very minimalistic, similar to Arceus, where you just need two energies and you're attacking. Uh, Additionally, water types with Chien-Pao EX being able to find your water energies, it's essentially replacing Capacious Bucket. It's that one-shot option that Palkia was kind of missing for some VMAX decks that have a return to strength, and then obviously you can't beat Radiant Greninja.
Radiant Greninja is just such an incredible card, being able to draw and also being one of the single best attackers in the format with efficiency of being able to take 2 knockouts for 3 energy.
Yeah, Radiant Greninja is also going to be very good in this specific matchup, as I'm sure you know if you were tuning in earlier, Dan is playing Lost Zone Giratina. So Comfeys, Sableyes, and the likes are going to be hitting the board, so it's going to require that Dan gets down that Manaphy as some sort of coverage against that Radiant Greninja, but nevertheless, it's a great draw support and the best Radiant in the game.
Absolutely. And so for Ryan, Palkia V-Star was very, very big about a year ago when it came out in Astral Radiance and for Worlds in 2022. Because it is such an efficient attacker, it is big, having 280 health, and that is multiple cross switcher in the prizes for Ryan and a rope. That is less than ideal. But back on track, for Palkia V-Star, it was really good because it could also accelerate to any water Pokemon. So it could be self-sustaining and just set up as many Palkia as you needed to play throughout the game.
Yeah, I know we said that rope kind of stinks, but if I'm reading this handwriting correctly, there's 3 escape rope in Ryan's deck. So
Are there?
yeah, so 2 is going to be fine. In addition, 4 cross switcher. So as long as Ryan draws those cross switchers off the prizes in a timely manner, shouldn't be terrible. Still having access to 2 and 2 bosses orders, I'm pretty sure Ryan's okay. But talking more about those card counts, 2 bosses orders, 3 escape rope, 4 cross switcher. This Palkia deck always wants to take down a threat. It doesn't want to just hit into the active blindly on something that they're just willing to sacrifice. For instance, this Cramorant. This Cramorant is definitely something that Dan doesn't particularly care about in this matchup, as Giratina V-Star is going to one-shot regardless. Sableye is going to ping damage regardless. Dan does not want to be three-shotting a Palkia V-Star with Cramorant, Cramorant, Sableye, Cramorant, Sableye, Sableye. That's just bad. So Dan's probably going to maybe attack with it this turn just to say 110 damage in your face, but Ryan doesn't really want to hit back into it. I think Ryan would rather kill this Giratina V-Star, coming down with the I believe it's what? So he needs 220,
Correct.
60,
220 HP.
160. So 8 bench Pokemon in combination. So I think Ryan would much rather attack into something like that, or these Comfies, or something of that sort. So with those 3 escape rope, or I guess 2, the 2 cross switcher available, and the 2 boss available, I think Ryan's gonna have a plethora of opportunities uh, to take a knockout on one of those more important Pokemon.
Well, and this is always one of the interesting things too for Palkia, because Palkia obviously used Radiant Greninja in the past, is when you use Radiant Greninja to snipe and knock out 2 low prize basics, you are also removing 2 bench Pokemon from your opponent's board. And that directly affects the amount of damage your Palkia is doing.
Mhm.
And I bring this up because it does affect the sequence of attack that Ryan may want to go with here, where rather than Greninja sniping to knock out the Comfies, it may be more advantageous for him to take a one-shot on the Giratina V, leave the Comfies there for a one-shot or 4 knockouts with Radiant Greninja in later turns.
I would be in favor of that play if Dan's turn didn't look so bad. Dan's using no Chorus going second, and Abyss Seeking.
Ooh. And those are not great
Those
cards
are
to get
not
rid
great
of.
cards at all. And now this is another thing to talk about is this boss on the Palkia would be important if Ryan didn't play 2 more escape rope in his deck to grab off something like an Irida.
Absolutely. And one thing to note, Ryan does, I believe, play Melanie in his deck.
And
And
I think that's in his hand.
it actually has it in his hand. And so I would agree with the Greninja play. The other thing Ryan can do, though, here is just Melanie, attach, fill his bench, and knock out the Giratina V-Star without having to use his Star Portal.
Right, yeah, looking at Ryan's hand, I don't even think he has the ability to use that Radiant Greninja's attack. He just doesn't have enough water energies going on at the moment.
Right.
So I think it's going to be better to just use this Melanie, see some cards. His alternative play could have been to Irida, but using Irida means he's not likely to attack this turn, which just seems pretty bad in a deck that's meant to be more aggressive.
Absolutely. Because then he would be forced to use his Star Portal, and he would have to draw into additional energy to do that.
So there's Chien-Pao.
There is. And so we could see a rope double cross switcher if he felt like it. But I'm curious to see what he's going to get with this Ultra Ball. I assume Babero, if anything.
I think Ryan had the Greninja this turn, if I'm like thinking about it correctly. 'Cause
If you switch into the
he had
Chien-Pao.
Irida. Or is that not just there may just be 0 Irida in his hand? I'm blabbing for no reason.
I think there were 2 Melanie, the Iono, cross switchers, couple Ultra Ball, and a boss.
Okay, then if there was then never mind. There was no Irida. If he had it, I think he would have seen it if he had the Irida in his hand.
So when you say that, Irida would have gotten a switch out and then Chien-Pao, move into Chien-Pao and get the energy out? Or how would you see that play go down?
So yeah, so a switching card because he already had 1 switching card to get into the Chien-Pao. He would have needed 1 to get out of the Chien-Pao. Chien-Pao would have searched for 2 water energy, and then he would have used concealed cards to ditch 1, and then Ultra Ball to get rid of the other, probably.
And that makes sense. And it looks like, though, he is going to be able to draw 4 off the barrel. And I don't even know if you play the switching out here, because unfortunately he has discarded what looks like a cross switcher and then a switch,
Yes, he does play 2 switch.
which is good. So he has another out to it. And I wonder what the last card is in his hand.
It's a Lost City. That's pretty
It's a
good.
lot. Okay. All right. So then do we see a water energy? We
Oh,
do.
The last card.
And another Palkia V to put on the board.
Very nice. Very nice.
And
2.
2 Palkia V. And so this is excellent because although Ryan did get rid of resources in the switch and the cross switcher, he was able to do it without expelling too much. So he's still going to have the ability to gust at least once with the cross switchers, and I believe he still has a boss, correct?
Yes, he has 2 boss in his deck. So, kind of talking about that cross switcher, Ryan essentially committed a combination of switching cards slash gusting cards, which are designed to help him take big price swings for a big price swing.
Exactly.
So he basically got the value out of them, just in a very roundabout and I guess you could say inefficient way.
I wouldn't even say that though. He kind of traded using his Star Portal ability too for those switching cards, saying
Yes.
that I'm gonna need less times to gust because Dan's gonna have to attack with a Giratina V-Star at some point. So being able to maintain that ability to take a 1 big shot with Chien-Pao or accelerate onto Radiant Greninja to snipe 2 Comfy, that's gonna be more worthwhile than trying to save all these switch cards.
Right. Yeah. Ryan's board very powerful. Basically, Ryan's going to be in this position we saw Sky in the previous game, which is just you continue to force your opponent to have it while you just kind of do.
Absolutely.
Additionally, this Chien-Pao could just gradually over the course of the game get powered up to a point where it can take down a Giratina V-Star. Because if Ryan continues to see water energies, he can commit water energies to the Palkia, leave the Chien-Pao on the board, and then whenever a Giratina comes down he's unable to deal with Palkia, promote Chien-Pao and use Star Portal to get the rest of the energy for a knockout.
That is a yes, exactly. And that I think is going to be the move, is just set up so that way he can take the one giant knockout and be able to go a 2-2-2 prize. And so with Dan retreating into Cramorant though, let's see what Dan does decide to retreat into, because he is at Greninja, or excuse me, Mirage Gate numbers on his Lost Zone. So do you go into Greninja and use Moonlight Shuriken here?
I think the problem is that requires 2 Mirage Gate, as that you use the Jet Energy to get that Comfey in the active this turn.
Yes.
So I think that just feels pretty bad as a use of resources. But this Cramorant feels even worse because it's a prize card, the damage is irrelevant. So I think I actually would prefer to use Greninja, because Greninja at least sets up the Palkias, it can put damage on the Babero. It has 180 damage is a lot better than doing 110 to something that has to get 2-shot or 1-shot anyway.
Absolutely. The unfortunate thing is, does he decide to bench a gear to and that was gonna be my question. Can you get full value out of the Mirage Gate by getting the 2 onto the Greninja and then 1 onto a Tina V on the bench? And now for Ryan, this opens up an opportunity to find a Gust out.
Right. If I'm Ryan this turn, if I'm bossing, I'm feeling pretty good about my situation.
Yes.
Dan does play a 3 line of Giratina, so it wouldn't be all the available ones without the use of Super Rod. But going down to 2 prize cards when your opponent's still at 6, it's going to be tough for even something like Sableye or another Greninja to even bring you close to back in the game.
Absolutely. And that's the issue with this Greninja play, is it doesn't actually take any prizes right now. It sets up for a larger Dan cannot attach that since he used a Jet Energy this turn.
Yeah, I think that's what he was thinking about, but he just forgot. So
Yeah.
can we tell him to remove the grass energy
Bryce, thank you, Bryce.
on the Giratina?
Yes. All right, so we do see damage placed onto, it looks like, the Greninja and the Babero, if I saw that correctly. All right, there you go.
No, because he had a double Mirage Gate.
Yep. All right, perfect. We
All right,
are
cool,
good.
Cool.
Everything's good here. Frank, way to be on it. We got this.
Bang.
Killing it. So it looks like there is a double snipe onto the 2 single prizes, which I don't mind, because then that means a Sableye can remove Ryan's draw engine alongside a Roxanne.
Yeah, looking at Dan's list and Ryan's board, just thinking of combinations that could disrupt Ryan enough to get Dan back in this game, or into a more dominant position at least. As you said, Dan, we know Dan has 2 Iono and 1 Roxanne from Deckless and from the previous games that he was on stream. And then Ryan only has that 1-1 line of Barrel. Additionally, his board is locked. Ryan does have a Lumineon V in his deck, though. So through the combination of Iridas and Ultra Balls and just drawing the Lumineon V itself, Ryan could climb back into this game. Obviously, that path to the peak is down, but I think Ryan's going to be looking to bump that anyway to make his Reading Greninja live.
Well, actually, Ryan also has Irida in hand. Unfortunately, he did discard a Cross Switcher off of that previous play, and it looks like he did not take either of the remaining Cross Switchers off of the prizes. So we're probably going to see a rope here, if I could imagine. Though with that rope, I wonder why he attached to the Palkia rather than the Radiant Greninja. Are we just seeing a double rope followed by Babero? I think we are. To which Dan will probably say, oh, just give you another Comfey. That's fine.
Looking at this, could be a pretty good turn to use Greninja.
Ooh, and I think it is going to be an excellent turn for Greninja. So we are going to conceal cards, and then with that, and a retreat from the Palkia.
Oh, is that a boss?
Is that?
Because if that's boss, I like that a lot
Oh,
more.
I would absolutely agree.
Wait, but has he already Iri?
He has not. He did not play Irida. Which I agree for this exact reason of, if you're going to burn both those switch outs, it doesn't make sense to use your supporter for turn. But I can't tell if it was a boss or something else.
Could have been Avery. Those are the only 2 dark blue supporters in his deck.
That is true. And an Avery here does not feel great. It is an Avery.
Ooh, okay.
Does not feel great.
I like this because now if Dan wants to eliminate 2 prizes being taken, he's going to discard Comfy and Sableye, which means
Yes.
he's down to Sableye out. He's down to Comfy to use to get to 10 in the Lost Zone, which means he's less likely to. There's less likely for a lot of things to happen. And worst case scenario is he does discard the 2 1 prizers, then he can put 90 on the Giratina and it's in range of Palkias for the rest of the game.
Absolutely. And it looks like Dan is getting rid of the Cram and the Ninja. And to this, I agree with what you're saying. I think Ryan has to go in with Greninja here,
Mhm.
knock out a Comfy and a Sableye, and say, Dan, you got to have some magic at hand. Because now Ryan still has the. Well, I say this. Now, this is actually tricky because by doing this, Ryan may take away the Chien-Pao one shot on the Giratina V.
I think that's fine though because you're going to take 2 this turn, then Dan's going to need Boss, power up his Giratina V-Star. Dan's going to need a lot to respond to actually punish Ryan for this play, and Ryan's going to take away the consistency that Dan's going to need to get there.
And that's a good point. Is that Ryan is going to put Dan so far behind from setting up and continuing his game that even taking a turn off or two-shotting a Giratina V-Star may not be the end of the world. Because there's also no guarantees that Dan takes a knockout here on the Greninja. Oh, interesting. Ryan decides to put 90 damage on the Giratina V rather than take 2 prizes.
This is a good play too. I was thinking about this when I was originally thinking of the 2 prize play, but I thought the 2 prize play might be better, but thinking more about this play just to talk about it since Ryan went for it. Now Ryan allows himself to draw Palkia V-Star and NRG, and now this Giratina is essentially one-shottable.
Yes.
Additionally, Ryan needs 1 boss to win the game, but Dan's win condition was for a Giratina V-Star to go unchecked and basically clear Ryan's board of attackers, and then make it to where Ryan has like wasted turns. So he would
Yeah.
go. So like this turn he could go boss kill the Palkia V with an energy with like Star Requiem,
Yes.
and then the next turn he could go boss kill another the V-Star he attaches to with Lost Impact, and then that would be his way back into the game. However, now that Ryan has damage with Giratina, all he needs to do is draw a Melanie, and then any threat that Dan goes after doesn't really matter.
And one other thing to note too is Dan had double ninja sniped the ninja and the Babero with the intent of taking a knockout with Sableye.
Right.
But because Ryan got down the Lost City and Ninja Snipe, both of Dan's Sableyes are now in the Lost Zone.
Oh, they are?
They are
I
because
did not realize that second
he
one
had
was
to
in
choose
Lost Zone.
between a Sableye and a Colress, I believe, a little earlier in the game, and then that Ninja Snipe just put the second one in the Lost Zone. So that removes Dan's ability to use a Sableye to take 2 prizes and keep his game moving forward.
Right, and yeah, and the Greninja's in the discard pile off Avery. So Ryan's going to use Babero, so he's going to get at least 1 more turn to set up himself around Iono.
And it is possible Dan gets the Super Rod, Double Gate, Ninja again, but for the amount of resources that would take, exactly like you're saying, Ryan's going to keep a barrel on board. And honestly, he may keep Ninja on board if this pans out this way, because none of those are outs to energy.
Yeah, those are not very good. Those are not very good cards. Obviously, he's also down his Cramorant.
Oh, and that's heartbreaking too.
Yeah, that's not very good either. Now he only has 1 Iono left. It's in his hand, but he's not gonna be able to disrupt Ryan for every remaining turn of the game. So that's pretty bad for Dan's game plan. That very good for Ryan because now Ryan can continue to. Obviously, he doesn't. Oh, he does know it. Never mind. I don't know what I'm saying. Ryan can build his hand and his board at the same time and not worry about his hand being disrupted and that causing his board to crash and burn. All he has to do
Absolutely.
is play around 1 more Iono, and he also knows that with the way Dan's board is built at the moment, if Dan is Ionoing and not targeting down threats on the bench, that's just as good.
Absolutely. And Ryan having that single prizer in the active means Dan's going to have to, again, Rod to get Cramorant back or something like that. But Dan's low on efficient attackers since they've either been lost zoned or discarded because of that Avery. We will see an escape rope, and this is now an interesting question for Ryan because we talked about keeping the barrel, but do you shove up a 2-prizer here and take that risk?
Well, if you're shoving up a 2-prizer, you're enticing Dan to use his Giratina, and if he does use his Giratina, Palkia just responds and knocks it out.
That's a fair
So
point, too.
I think Babero is more valuable at this point in the game because you're just gonna have to have it like that for the next couple turns. Otherwise, Dan could just set up a Giratina that goes unchecked, and I'd rather be able to check his things than focus on my price cards.
And that's a very fair point, is just to put yourself in a position where you can sustain attackers and sustain your game plan for the rest of the game. The one concern here is that because Ryan has used Palkia's V-Star ability, because he is low on switch cards, there's a small chance that Chien-Pao gets stuck in the active, but I'm not sure how likely it is, or even how much of a concern it is for Ryan, because he could take a turn or two off and still definitely be in this game.
Yeah, worst case scenario, if Dan were to lead this in the active, that means he's not putting any damage on the board. He's not getting any closer to taking any prizes, and that just means Ryan gets another free manual attachment onto another Palkia V, which means he's even less susceptible to being hurt by a boss.
Absolutely, and I think that's also a painful one. But it
Mhm.
looks like from the way Dan is playing this out, I think he intends to go in with the Giratina V-Star to use Star Requiem on that Chien-Pao to take the knockout and say, Ryan, because you have no attacker set up right now, I'm going to be able to do this without you responding. And so it'll be on Ryan to find a Melanie or something similar to keep going.
Yeah, I like this. I think Dan is realizing that more safe/cautious plays would just be playing to lose at this point. He has to make
Absolutely.
a play that can put him in an advantageous position, and the only way to have that happen is by forcing Ryan to whiff.
Oh, but this is interesting. He does decide to go in with the Cramorant and just go for the two-shot on the Chien-Pao, which I don't hate either.
Now, this is a good play too. I think he has no Sableye, obviously,
Right.
and a Lost City this Cramorant would be pretty bad. But actually, there is no but because then
That
Dan
would just be
can't.
bad.
Yeah, it would just be bad. I was gonna say he could use Shred on Giratina V to knock out the Chien-Pao instead of putting his V-Star in way, but then Ryan takes his last two prizes to win the game. So it's gonna be tough. If Ryan gets a Lost City here, I'm not sure what Dan's route is back into the game through prize trading.
And this is the one time where it gets a little difficult for Ryan because he has burned so many switch outs. This Chien-Pao may get stuck, but attaching an energy to the Chien-Pao, drawing with Greninja, setting up another Palkia V-Star, he's still going to be in such a good position in this game that he's probably going to be okay to push through.
Yeah, I think this this Chien-Pao getting knocked out is just two prizes. Like
Exactly.
and that feels weird to say, but the way it's all going is Ryan just needs to knock out a one prizer,
Yep.
which will happen at some point in the game, and then he needs to respond to the Giratina V-Star, and that's it. So as long as he has those two things on his board by the time Dan has a chance at
Ooh.
climbing back in, it doesn't matter.
And we just saw a switch out come in, a Palkia V-Star and a switch with energy in hand and the boss already, and we know that Giratina, yep, and Dan just says, you know what, man, I can't do anything about that.
Those were two very good cards to draw off of Radiant Greninja. He hadn't even used Bidoof or Bibarel yet.
He had not. That was absolutely insane. And I think his hand was too full to effectively use Barrel at
Right.
that time. So just what a closeout for Ryan to just seal the win by knocking out the Giratina V-Star. And like you said, really validated the decision to put that damage there to make sure it's harder for Dan to play around
Right.
Palkia's damage output later in the game.
Yeah, I think we're overly focused on the 2-2-2 price strat, whereas Ryan
There's
was
no backup. Just talk a little bit longer.
focused on just conserving his board. One of the weaknesses of Palkia ever since we lost Inteleon and all the ways it had of being more strong in terms of consistency was the fact that you couldn't chain attacks. And so
Right.
Ryan's concern was saying, even if you were able to knock out one of my attackers, as long as I can knock you back out and preserve this attacker for one more turn, I'll be okay. And obviously, with the only attacker in Dan's deck that can effectively deal with Palkia's being Giratina's, I think it was the appropriate
Right.
assessment to say, I'm gonna damage your Giratina.
And I would agree with that. And per your point of getting locked in on the prize 2-2-2, I think it's an excellent point too that you always want to plan out and map out your game plan and how you can win as quickly as possible. But sometimes that means saying I'm gonna win a turn slower because then that means you win 2 turns slower or
Right.
3 turns slower. I was playing a game against Jake Gearhart a while ago, and I was playing Palkia V-Star with Inteleon, and I benched a Luminion V in order to accelerate the game and make sure I could keep playing. And he made the comment of, well, that means I win 1 turn sooner, so you're hoping that you win 1 turn sooner by playing it. And I don't always think about that as how a single play affects the time of the game, but that's really what we use to
Mhm.
make our decisions.
Right. And one more thing to talk about, especially with the prize routing from this game, is Ryan may take 2 prizes sooner, but he still has to 2-shot the Giratina.
Yes.
Because Dan's a great player and he's not going to bench 4 more Pokemon to fill up his
Right.
board and give Ryan away to one shot. He's going to make this Giratina do everything it possibly can to make Ryan's deck mess up at some point.
Absolutely. And knowing that Ryan had used his V-Star and he couldn't really V-Star onto the Chien-Pao to take that big one shot, it makes sense that he knows how to make sure he can take the prizes he needs to in order to close out the game.
Right.
Well, all right, we will take a break here. Our backup game was even more efficient than this one. So we'll take a quick break, get ready for the next round, round 5 of 6, and then we'll be back talking with you guys to watch some more excellent Pokemon. Thanks for staying with us. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. We have round 5 of the Nerd Rage League Challenge. Our 4 O's are Sky De La Cruz and Ryan Prusak, who you both just saw play the last couple rounds. So we are going to show you some of the other interesting matchups going on. And on our first screen, we have Rapid Strike Box versus Arctina. We saw a little bit of Rapid Strike Box earlier, piloted by Mo, but now we're going to watch Connor O'Shea, who has been playing this deck for a while very, very effectively. So, Frank, remind us for Rapid Strike Box, what is the board that Connor's trying to set up here?
Well, Rapid Strike Box usually wants a plethora of Inteleon VMAX, Octillery for your consistency, Radiant Alakazam. Basically, you just want all your damage manipulators and increasers on the board. However, in this matchup, Arceus is weak to fighting. So you're definitely going to want to have a Rapid Strike Urshifu V down early using either 100 Furious Blows, Guilt Thrust, or a combination of those attacks to take early prize cards.
And I think that's exactly what Connor wants to see now with this starting to Urshifu. So on Connor's end, if he's able to get a Water Energy in the discard and draw a Rapid Strike Energy, he can take a turn 1 knockout on this Arceus. But unfortunately, without the Water Energy in hand, I don't know how likely that's looking.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be a realistic play for Connor. Additionally, Spiritomb being down. Had Connor not had 2 Melanies in his hand, Kevin would have also turned off Luminion V as an out.
Absolutely. And even with Melanie in hand, Connor's not going to have a way to get water in the discard. He does have the Rapid Strike Energy, so we will be able to see a Strafe at least, which could set up a possible Rapid Flow for a knockout on Arceus V-Star, but not quite the turn Connor was probably hoping for here.
Yeah, it's not great, but I can't say it's bad either. The early turn aggression of taking that knockout going second against RCS decks isn't too common.
Agreed. It's not something you'd really expect to happen.
Right. I mean, he still has the Rapid Strike in hand. He can still strafe. He still has he still has Nest Ball. He still has a lot of resources in his hand. So I honestly I wouldn't even be too upset if I were Connor.
I would agree. And I gotta imagine with this Nest Ball, he's gonna just go into something that he can strafe into, or maybe just another Inteleon. Because I believe next turn he's gonna want to use the Ultra Ball to get an Octillery out to start drawing through his deck and playing the game.
I would be interested in seeing him grab a second Remoraid here, just because if Kevin, maybe Connor expects Kevin to attack into this Urshifu V. I think if I'm Kevin, I would honestly prefer dealing with the source of draws being the Remoraid, because then you slow down Connor's ability to chain meaningful Urshifu attacks.
I can just see the excitement in Kevin's eyes looking at that board, thinking that maybe he can knock out that Octillery and just ruin Connor's day. Because the issue now is I think Connor may attach to the Urshifu in the active and strafe still, but there's nothing he really wants to switch into because then Kevin's going to take a knockout likely with his Arceus.
Right, and then getting damage onto an Inteleon V, worst case scenario, for I guess kind of worst case scenario for Kevin, best case scenario for Connor, would be a damaged Inteleon V that you want to evolve into a VMAX, now is a guaranteed 3 prizes essentially.
Right.
Which doesn't sound too great if you're Connor anyway.
Absolutely. And so I'm curious to see what Connor does do here. For strafe, are you required to switch into a Pokemon?
I'm not sure. I think Connor's debating if the 60 damage even matters, but looking at it, I don't actually. I think it just says
it looks
you
like
may.
he is okay. So he is deciding to keep the Urshifu in the active, which honestly I agree with that because Arceus is not going to be able to knock it out this turn.
Yeah, it says you may, and this 60 is very good because now a Gmax Rapid Flow can knock out this Arceus V due to weakness and get some damage on this Giratina V-Star, putting it in knockout range from an Inteleon VMAX plus double gunner and Radiant Alakazam.
Absolutely. So I think for Kevin, he really just wants to be able to hit into this Urshifu and ideally get the Judge Path combo to disrupt.
Right.
But
don't
things may
see a
not be
whole
going
lot
well
of-
over there.
Yeah, I see 4 energies.
Ooh, that is not what Kevin is hoping for.
That's not great at all. I don't even know what like the best play here is, I think.
So if it were me, all things considered, I would probably want to attach a basic energy to Arceus V in the active and gust up the Octillery and knock it out. Because in my mind, if he had no supporter in hand and he got the Remoraid, more than likely he's reliant on that Octillery to play the game.
Well, I would agree, but I don't think he even had a way to get the Remoraid. I'm pretty sure like he just
Oh,
only-
you're right. Well, I should say, yeah, you're right. He had no Gust in hand, so this probably is the correct play.
Yeah, I think your best play is just to make sure you have 2 things that can attack next turn.
Right.
So whichever one goes on damage, you can play with it. I think I would have preferred actually to see the V-Guard go onto the Giratina though, because V-Guard does reduce damage from benched attacks from G-Max Rapid Flow.
It does.
So this Giratina could be out of range of an elaborate double gunner, Radiant Alakazam, and then G-Max Spiral play. But now the Giratina could die in essentially 1 real attack.
Absolutely. And 1 out 2 is, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking there. But with the putting another basic energy on the Arceus on the bench is fine too, because you're still reliant on finding the double turbo energy in order to attack with that Arceus.
Mhm.
But now Connor's got to be
Oh,
feeling.
Connor, no, don't put Luminion down. There's a Spiritomb there. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Oh no, Connor, please. I'm glad you saw that. I hope Connor sees that.
Unless
is-
this is an ordering thing. Is this a sequential thing where you get to pick the order? I don't think
Oh
it is.
no. Oh, and he just emptied his hand to do so too.
Oh my gosh.
This did happen to my opponents
Look at
twice at
Kevin's face.
NAIC.
Kevin's like, "Oh, I have a chance. I have a way."
And
hit-
you just see the despair in Connor's eyes of what just happened. My heart breaks for that guy. All right. Well, on the bright side for Connor, it's not like Kevin's really doing too much scary stuff right now. So he still has an opportunity to put some damage on that RCSV in the active. And Kevin's still going to at best 2-shot into that Urshifu V.
Oh, yeah, Connor's not very happy, but you can't really blame him.
And we do see him go into the Luminion. Interesting. And what did Kevin get off his top deck? It looks like is that a research? Or is it a double turbo? Because that's also sad.
Double turbo, grass energy, psychic energy, +1 card I can't identify.
I also...
I mean, regardless, power
Is that a squirrel? It may be a squirrel.
attach and squove it. Attach and squove it.
You absolutely attach and squove it in this situation. because-
Power Edge isn't even that like
It's not.
bad because Connor has 0 cards. So this
It
Luminion
is
will-
the squirrel. Kevin, you bench that squirrel and you nest dash.
and then draw an RCS V-Star.
Absolutely. There's only one option, and it is a
The
V-Star.
reincarnate of Landon Kaler.
Oh,
it's not that,
it
never
was
mind.
a V. We got halfway there.
Yeah.
All right, so I think
Is that
we are
even halfway though?
it's not. So we are going to see a power edge here, and honestly, like you said, that's not too bad.
Connor needs an energy off the top, which is just,
That
it's-
is-
it's just a battle pass, so now he's doing
Oh,
nothing.
he is. Oh, I am so sorry, Connor. And yes, we are going to. Oh, the slow death of the squirrel though is incoming, and we're just going to have to see a pass by Connor.
I don't even think you squirrel again because now you wouldn't have enough cards to draw. Full
No, because I think now Kevin actually got a research off the top deck.
was that a research? I thought it was a boss.
Is it a boss?
I can't tell. I cannot tell.
I also cannot tell.
All right, Power Edge, 2 prizes. Nice, nice, nice.
And I would tend to agree. Well, actually, no, I don't know if I would agree. I probably would have squirreled there knowing you're going to take 2 prizes.
Well, I mean, maybe he was thinking since he had the boss, now if he draws an Arceus V-Star, he can V-Star for... Oh, he has 2 boss. He got a boss out of the prize. But
There you
I
go.
think he was holding boss, saying that like if he top decks Giratina V-Star, he's knocking out that Urshifu.
That's fair. And it
But-
looks like he has Judge and Double Boss and an Iono. Those are not the cards you want to play right now.
Yeah, I don't think you're playing a single one of those. I think I would boss and Power Edge because you can go boss and this Urshifu doesn't die.
Actually, I really like this play.
I like this too.
Just shred into the Inteleon VMAX.
Yeah, I think I like this a lot because you already took 2 on Luminion, so pressuring this, like, you have to get through an Inteleon or an Urshifu, and you might as well. Okay, never mind. Interesting.
So if I'm gonna boss there, I would want it to either be the Urshifu or the Remoraid.
Yeah, I think that play was kind of risky because that play gives Connor the chance to top deck a research this turn
Right.
and then have been able to climb back into it. But I guess you could say he's getting. I guess he's getting punished for the. Oh, so in chat, someone Weiss on ice said what happened with the Luminion. The Spiritomb blocks Luminion, so Connor benched Luminion to try and grab research, but Spiritomb blocked it, so it just got benched into nothing, and that was at the expense of Connor's entire hand, which is why you see him despairing at the moment.
And this is why. And Kevin actually did get the Ultra Ball, I believe, either off the prizes or the top deck, and does Ultra Ball for the V Star. So I think this is excellent because now Kevin can really get into the game, put down a path to the peak, and if I'm Kevin, I would love to see a boss knockout on the Remoraid, knowing you have multiple boss left in deck, and just keep a boss in hand because then next turn you can just boss and knock up the Urshifu V with Giratina V Star and take the knockout.
And to respond to one more person in chat, Bama Gambler. I don't actually know Michael's record. I think it's 3-1 or worse. He might have dropped, to be
Hold,
honest.
please. Michael Davidson is currently no longer in the tournament, so he may have dropped.
So you can go talk to him about that, Carson.
Well, I appreciate everyone in chat being invested in the results here. But so, Kevin, did you see what 2 cards Kevin got off of the Starbirth, Frank? Because I unfortunately did not.
Of course I didn't. I was absorbed in the chat.
All right, well, fair enough.
We'll see. He's probably gonna slam them. They're
Excellent
probably
focus.
They're probably Giratina V-Star and then something else to kill this Urshifu.
I actually would not like to. Oh, and that's actually true. If you can just gust knock out the Urshifu, you are in such a good position because you can attach a double turbo and lost zone the double turbo, and have that count as your knockout. But the path to the peak's definitely what you want to see, and I believe you probably are going to see the boss on the Urshifu. We're going to see the attachment of the double turbo, and then lost zone the double turbo and take the knockout. And I like this. I would probably have preferred to see the Remoraid knockout, but I don't think it matters too much.
Yeah,
And yeah,
that's all there is. There is no way back into the game. One thing to talk about just on that last Lost Zone play, I would have preferred to see the energy from the RCSV damaged and the V-Guard come off
yes.
and keep the DT available so that you can make one more attachment this turn. So like you can attack with Giratina, do 280, but then you don't have to focus on committing more energies to attacking with it for the rest of the game. You can focus on attacking with an RCSV star, which can continue to refresh the board a little bit. The game wasn't going to get to that position, but had there been a little bit more going on from Connor's board, it could have just been one thing to talk about.
And it's a good point to prioritize keeping and maintaining his attackers that you're able to use throughout the game.
Right.
All right, so we're going to jump over to our second game since that was a bit of a quick one. And on this one, we have the best deck in the format, Meowscarada, playing a tier 2 deck called Lost Box, Turbo Lost Box. And we saw Chris playing a little earlier, but Frank, can you give us a quick reminder of what Lost Box's really engine and goal is here?
So Lost Box, as in the name, wants to get card in the Lost Zone to use attacks like Cramorant, to use cards like Mirage Gate, and the most important one, which you see in the active, is Sableye and its Lost Mine attack. Especially into a matchup like this, Meowscarada is a stage 2, so it's going to need to evolve. And in order to evolve, that requires putting down low HP basics that can get picked off with Sableye. And as it's in the active, and there's a Sprigatito in the discard, you can assume that Chris has been using Cramorant and Sableye thus far to get to a board with what looks like one Meowscarada available.
Yes, and we didn't see earlier in the game, but it looks like Martin had either hit into or used the Bouquet ability to hit into a Dragonite, and is just kind of stuck in this position with a Meowscarada in hand, whereas Chris has 10 in the Lost Zone and is starting to use Lost Mine from Sableye. And so this, unfortunately, is where the Meowscarada deck can kind of fall to pieces. If Lost Zone is able to pick apart its engine and its evolving basics, that's where you're not going to be able to win. Which otherwise, Meowscarada is a very solid matchup into Lost Zone because of the amount of small single prize basics.
Yeah, with Meowscarada doing 30 damage, it's better than Double Gunner when you think about it.
True.
So, because you could use 2 flower bouquets and then arrange the damage with Alakazam to take 2 knockouts, one through abilities, one through Yoga Loop, and then rinse and repeat the process the next turn. And so you could technically take 3 prizes, 3 to 4 prizes if all went the exact way you wanted it to.
Absolutely. So one thing that Martin may have going in his favor if Chris does retreat and hit in with this Dragonite, well, that's a lie because this is the only Meowscarada on the board for Martin, and I think then taking this knockout, going down to 2 prizes remaining, is probably going to be about all she wrote, since Chris would be able to take a knockout on anything else on Martin's board.
Yeah, if Chris had access to the boss still, then this game it's over.
Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, a disappointing one there for Masquerada too, since Martin really wasn't able to get the board he was hoping for, and Chris was clearly able to set up, get the engine going, and take out the evolving basics that Martin had been using to really set up his game. So those are 2 very rapid games. So we're going to take a quick second just to talk about some of the stuff coming up for Nerd Rage Gaming. So as we mentioned, tonight is our league challenge. Once a month, we will have a league challenge here on Thursday nights. Tonight we had 39 Masters players, which is incredible, and also is not quite as reckless as some of the other league challenges we've seen around, which is a good thing. So we'd love to come out or have you come out here next month. We'll have one in September, October as well to try to get those points and get ready for the 2024 World Championships. So, and as we mentioned, even beyond Pokemon, we have Digimon, we have Magic the Gathering, we have One Piece. We would love to have you come out here for any of these events. And Nerd Rage will also have once a quarter a $1,000 League Cup tournament. And we are still planning that for the next upcoming quarter. We would love to have you come out here. We've expanded the cap we have for events like that. We had 57 Masters for our last, and we would love to get you out here. The $1,000 prize is always guaranteed. So if you want to come out, play some Pokemon, make some money, it'd be great to see you out here. So we'll give you guys all a little break and then come back for our last round of the tournament to see who's going to take home the win in this league challenge. See you all in a bit. Welcome back, everyone, to the last round of our Nerd Rage League Challenge for July. On the board here, we have Stephen H. playing Chien-Pao versus our undefeated 5-0 Sky De La Cruz playing Arc Gardy, which this Arc Gardy list has apparently been just functioning really well today.
Yeah, as we saw from Sky's stream game, she was able to shut the Gardy player out of the game entirely. Just double Ralts turn 1, attach, turn 2 attack, path, slow the opponent down. Obviously, Sky's opponent didn't have that great of a start in that game, but not that it even matters. Sky just popped off.
And I think it's one of the interesting things. I love her take on Arceus because the reason Arceus has been such an effective deck is because it's so low maintenance, and it set itself up, and you just build your own board from it. So why not pair that with an additional draw engine? Some people use Bibarel, but in this case, Sky said, let's use it with Kirlia to then get the bonus of Gallade. Because I've had this conversation, honestly, with you, Frank, and the rest of the team at times of Sharon's Care feels like it fits in this Arceus deck, but I never will ever see it when I need to.
Right.
So how do I play it?
Yeah,
just fix that by throwing it in a way to get it every turn.
Yeah, I like this a lot. A lot of the decks that want to play Sharon's Care are also wanting to play Bibarel. They also want to play Boss, namely Arceus Giratina. So just saying, I don't need Bibarel. I want to directly search my supporters and it be an Arceus attacker. The only problem is the Kirlias, the Ralts, the Gallade, and the Gardevoir take up a lot of space in the deck. So the Gardevoir line, the Gallade line, etc. comes at the expense of an alternative attacker.
Absolutely. And so on Steven's end, he is playing the Baxcalibur Chien-Pao. It looks like with is it a 1-1 Palkia line?
Where'd I put his list?
Well, either way, it's with the Palkia line. And he does have the cross switchers as well. So for him, he's trying to do very similar to what Quinn was trying to do before and just set up that Baxcalibur, set up your big one-shot attackers of Chien-Pao. And in this case, rather than using Arceus to use Starbirth to set up the board, he's going to use Palkia to have that Star Portal ability to then throw energy from the discard onto the board. Essentially, saying even if I don't have energy in my hand, I'm able to load a ton of energy and spike an attack with Chien-Pao or get a Greninja attack out of nowhere.
Okay, but what if I told you that he plays a 1-2 Palkia line?
A 1-2. I actually kind of love that. What do you think about that?
I think it's very interesting. It's similar to what's the name? There was another deck concept that played this.
So that was actually Lost Gudra in when Lost Origin first came out with the card Thornton, because they would play less Gudra V to remove it as an opportunity for people to boss knock it out, and would Thornton a single prize basic into the Gudra V to then evolve and start attacking with it.
I mean, I like this because with Steven's deck, the way it's built, it's more focused on Chien-Pao as opposed to Ryan's deck we previously saw, which is more focused on Palkia itself. So basically, you don't want to start it a ton because it's not as productive in matchups. You just want it there as an available energy acceleration option and attacker in certain matchups.
Absolutely. And I think exactly like you said, Ryan's deck was focused around Palkia as the attacker, the engine. It was a Palkia deck. And for here, it's a Chien-Pao Excalibur deck, just with Palkia assisting. So why do you think he's playing the 1-2 count of Palkia rather than a more like standard 2-1?
Well, he's playing the one Palkia V and one Hisuian Heavy Ball. So I guess that's acting as his outs to guarantee the Palkia V at some point in the game through Irida to search Hisuian Heavy Ball, etc. And then I think he's playing 2 copies of Palkia V-Star because there is no way to interact with your prize cards for evolution Pokemon. And so he wants to guarantee that he's able to find a Palkia V-Star every turn.
And that makes complete sense. And also to just limit those bad starters, since starting the Palkia V kind of hurts with the 2 retreat,
Right.
and it can be a liability.
Yeah, starting Palkia V in matchups like Arceus is not ideal because you're less likely to accelerate to your Chien-Paos, you're less likely to be attacking for powerful numbers on turn 2.
Absolutely. And it looks like Steven, honestly, this is an all but ideal turn. He has a Frigibax down, he has a Chien-Pao in the active, he has Greninja to draw, a Palkia V on the bench. The only thing is, I don't know if I saw a supporter in his hand, which is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it could be impactful if Sky is able to find a path to the peak this turn and disrupt some of Steven's draw through that Radiant Greninja. But if Sky is playing down a path to the peak, that would mean that her hand is either really good and doesn't care about a path to the peak in play, or she's very concerned that her board is in trouble.
Absolutely. And looks like Sky has the double Nest Ball in hand, which, why play Battle VIP when you can just start 2 Nest Ball?
Exactly.
And I think Sky is a little nervous about that Chien-Pao knockout, which is why we are putting an Arceus down on the board and a Judge. And Steven's probably pretty okay with this if he didn't have that draw supporter in hand.
Yeah, Steven's if Steven's getting path to the peak, it doesn't matter if those energies stay in his hand because he's not going to be able to use Greninja. So he's not really worried about. He's going to be able to see at least 2 more cards through Greninja. He's going to be able to thin 2 cards through Greninja. So he's probably going to be able to find some sort of action for his following turn. So yeah, I'd say he's pretty content with this.
Absolutely. And Sky, I think, is probably pretty happy with that board, but she did miss an energy attachment, and that's kind of a big deal with the Arceus deck.
Yeah, this Judge is going to feel very pressuring for Sky. She's going to feel like she needs an energy, and not just energy, she's going to need a follow-up.
Exactly. Because it's going to be the energy. It's going to be able to then set up a Arceus V-Star to attack. All right, we see Heavy Ball.
Those are some good cards.
Oh, that unfortunately is 2 more energy retrievals than we wanted to see. That is a good card.
Yeah, this is were those 3 energy retrievals in Steven's
There's
hand?
3 energy retrievals, a Hisuian Heavy Ball, and a Excalibur.
Okay, yeah, those are definitely. I think that's 3 more energy retrievals than I'd be looking to see at this
Right.
point in the game.
On the bright side, Steven does have 200 energy in the discard, and being able to use Chien-Pao to get 2 out of the deck. If Steven sees an Irida or even just a raw candy, Steven's cooking. We're
Yeah,
going to be making moves.
Additionally, on the bright side, Steven's Chien-Pao is not in danger of getting knocked out. Obviously, that Frigibax is.
Also, absolutely.
But if Steven's able to get another Frigibax down, then he's gonna have another turn to find himself a big 1-hit knockout onto an Arceus V or presumably V-Star, judging by the Ultra Ball in Sky's hand.
And we actually just saw an Irida and a Pokestop off of that Greninja.
That's
People's
pretty
Greninjas
good.
are just firing right now.
Greninja is him today, or her,
Yes.
or whatever you want to call Greninja. Greninja is drawing everything you need. We saw Ryan draw the perfect 2 cards to take the game versus Dan. I think we saw Greninja played by someone else to draw a Battle VIP pass in like another search card. So people are just getting all sorts of setup with Greninja today.
Absolutely. And with that Pokestop, I saw Steven, and honestly, Steven made an excellent choice there. Before putting the Pokestop down, he checked his prizes to make sure that if he does want to use it, is it going to do more harm than good? So in this situation, do you think you use the Pokestop first or just go for the Irida?
Well, I'm not very sure because I actually like using Irida first because you have what you need to knock out this Arceus is you need energies. And the only way to get energies is by discarding them at this point.
Oh,
And
that's a
so
fair point.
and so by getting rare candy and Frigibax, you can put a Frigibax on the bench, you can hold rare candy and Bax Caliber in your hand, and then just not evolve until you know you're gonna take a knockout. Because then if you're gonna take a knockout, great. You can use the Bax Caliber, it takes 2 prizes. If you're not, you didn't waste a Bax Caliber for no reason.
And I actually like this decision. I would, in this position, get a Palkia V-Star rather than a second Frigibax, just because then you can use a Star Portal if you're desperate, but more so, if your Baxcalibur gets gusted up and knocked out, you can just have a sustained attacker there while you try to set up your next one.
Right. I mean, against Sky's deck, this is a little less. This feels a little worse because Sky is able to more reliably find access to Sharon's care through refinement and buddy catch.
True.
However, it's a 2 prize high HP Pokemon that applies pressure and is gonna take minimum effort for Steven to pull off. So it's like a crutch almost in this situation.
Absolutely. And the other advantage that Steven has with that is for Sky to draw as aggressively as she may want to, she's probably going to have to fill her board.
Right.
So Palkia V-Star may not be taking a knockout on an active V-Star, but it sure could take out a benched Arceus V. Ooh, that one hurts. That feels good. All right. It was a very moderate Pokestop.
Yeah, I don't. That wasn't a great Pokestop in all honesty. It's one of your path counters gone. You got rid of a boss and a Bax Caliber, and you're not any closer to taking a knockout.
And you heard, I believe Steven's Super Rod is prized, if I remember correctly. And how many Super
I
Rod
think
does he
so.
play?
Steven plays. Oh my gosh, where is it? One Super Rod.
All right, so then that's a little problematic because if this Baxcalibur goes down, maybe a little more hard pressed to find another one.
Right. I think. Yeah, that's pretty rough. I think if you're Steven here, I would like to see Steven use. I don't know if I want to see him use Star Portal or Superior Energy Retrieval here.
I kind of want to see him use Star Portal because he'd have to discard other superior energy retrievals in this position to
Mhm.
take the knockout.
Additionally, if a Path to the Peak comes down, he currently has no response to it. So it feels better to keep the resources in your hand available for a more likely outcome from Sky than to play greedy for an outcome that is less likely.
I would agree, and especially seeing that you basically have to thin your hand of all of your energy retrieval for almost the rest of the game. That's not the right use of resources to try to save the Star Portal.
The only argument I can see, actually no, never mind. Star Portal is a great ability, and I should just read cards better. Steven can knock out this active RCSV.
Oh, absolutely.
I just wasn't thinking about that.
Oh, because with the 3 in the discard and the 1 from hand, he is going to be able to put 4 energy on the board. Please just put them on the Chien-Pao. Excellent. And then just take the one shot in the RCSV.
Yeah,
Now, if it was an RCSV star,
Mhm.
things would be a little sketchier, but
I thought I only saw 2 energies in the discard pile, which is why I was saying all that. Had I known there was already 3 energies in there, then I would have long agreed with the Palkia V-Star play. However, I thought he had to be a little bit more greedy with this play because I thought he needed more. But this is great.
that is an excellent, excellent turn 2 for Steven, because not only do you have the Baxcalibur, you have a knockout, and you have another Frigibax on board if Sky does try to gust. But Sky has to play Raihan this turn anyway.
And Steven has another knockout lined up currently because if Sky were to put a Path to the Peak in play, that would require Sky to off of Starbirth get Raihan and a DTE, and then Raihan for a Stadium, or some combination of the sort. As we saw, Raihan for DTE,
Yep.
or no, not Raihan for DTE, Starbirth for Raihan and DTE, then Raihan, and now this would have to be for a Path to the Peak, but that's just not a good play because then if Steven is able to find one counter Stadium, Sky's entire it's over because she'd have no backup attacker.
Absolutely. And Sky does hit into Chien-Pao for 180 here and puts 3 on the bench to Arceus. And honestly, this is one other reason why Chien-Pao is so scary for Arceus decks, because Arceus can't reach 220 with a belt.
Right.
There's no tool modifier except for Defiance Belt if you're behind on prizes that lets you reach for that 220 EX. And what did he just top deck there?
Steven top decks an Irida, which now Steven can basically put up his board in a spot where Sky can't do much of anything to give herself a turn of wiggle room.
And honestly, I would almost love to see another Pokestop here.
Well, I would have. I hmm. It's interesting. Yeah, definitely get rid of the Iono because he could have Shivery chilled, energies, Pokestop. It doesn't really matter. He's gonna superior energy retrieval for the 4 energies in the discard pile regardless. So I guess it's just a matter of what else you want to do with the turn. I would like to see. I don't know. I don't know what I'd like to see.
I love to see that
That's
for
what. Yeah,
one.
you love to see that for sure.
Wow, and you can see Sky's reaction of, "Are you kidding me?" So then, interesting option here for Steven is he could fill his bench and then cross switcher up that Arceus V to take a knockout. But the simpler and I think the better play may just be to bench a second Chien-Pao if he can even do beyond that, get a second Excalibur out, but then use Shivering Chill and then just take a knockout on this active Arceus V-Star with Chien-Pao, knowing that Sky has to put up another Arceus V-Star to attack.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what play Steven goes for. Sky's sitting on 1 card in hand. So
True.
Steven has to know, especially with the order Sky, played her cards down, and you know that anything Starbirth or Raihan for went straight into play.
Absolutely.
So there's not much of anything going on at the hand. So I think this is actually a pretty solid turn to just hedge your bets on not getting path disrupted. So I'd like to see Steven set up his entire hand to say, I'm winning. So like do as many actions as possible to get to a position where you can win the next turn. So that all you need to do next turn is maybe need a Pokestop for an item or Greninja into something like or Chivery Chill. Just make it to where you need the least amount of things possible in the following turn.
Absolutely. And I think getting that second Chien-Pao is a part of that, where he can just fill his hand with energy from his deck and then throw it all on the board. So even if Sky Ionos, paths, whatever, Steven can say, that's cool, knockout on whatever Sky advances. And so you are going to see that Chien-Pao come down.
We still haven't seen Shivery Chill unless he just still haven't seen Shivery Chill.
And there we go. Okay. So Steven, clearly he's going through the motions. He is getting everything out of the deck. Not quite in the order I would ideally hope for, but he's still clearly moving it along. And now I think honestly here you do go for the cross switcher knockout on the benched V with Palkia and then spread your energy in a way where if Arceus takes a knockout anywhere, you just respond knockout with Chien-Pao. What do you think though, Frank? What's the ideal play here?
I'm not sure. Steven still has what? Does he have 1 or 2 more superior energy retrievals left in his hand?
He has 2 left in his hand.
Right, it's 2 superior energy retrieval left in his hand. He has a guaranteed knockout with this Chien-Pao.
So the only reason I'm thinking the aggressive knockout with Palkia and fill the board, which it looks like it's what Steven's doing, is because the way Steven loses is by Sky Ionoing, throwing down a path, and then starting to cycle Arceus at that point. By doing this and putting enough energy on the bench Chien-Pao where Steven's going to be able to take a knockout no matter what, Steven's just kind of in a position of, like, no loss.
Yeah, I think
I don't love that energy placement.
I don't
but
either. I think he's trying to make everything 1 energy attachment away from retreating, which just seems a little silly.
I would agree, because if Sky takes a knockout, he doesn't need to retreat. He just puts up the next guy.
Also, the way Steven's allocating his energies, if Sky is able to go boss knockout onto something and then and Steven isn't able to find access to an energy, like again, it takes a lot because Sky's sitting on 1 card in hand. But if
Absolutely.
Sky were able to go path boss knockout on like a Chien-Pao or does something with an energy card attached to it, then Steven could whiff a knockout and then things could spiral that way, but that takes a lot.
I would tend to agree. So, all right, so it looks like Steven does go in, does take the knockout, and does go down to 2 prizes remaining. And Sky got, well, at least something off of that Pokestop. But it looks like she has 4 cards in hand. So we are at least going to be able to see a Curlia come out and draw 2, but I don't know if that's going to be enough.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be enough either. It's going to take. There's
This
just
is
so many cards that Sky needs at this point in the game to. Again, because we've talked about playing to win versus playing to lose. There's so many things Sky needs to play to win to have a chance. There's a lot she could do to delay the inevitable, but
right.
at that point, at 5-0 and 4-1, I think both people recognize that delaying the inevitable is not what needs to be done.
Exactly. You need to play, you need to find the line of play that'll get you that victory. And with Sky is, oh, unfortunately, yeah. And I don't think that's going to do it with the Nest Ball, Ultra Ball off of there. And yep, Sky sees the writing on the wall, says there's no way to disrupt this hand that guarantees a knockout. It's going to be game from here. And Steven shows that he had two superior energy retrieval in hand. And that was just going to lock it up. So before we get to the end of the day, we will jump over to our second game here. And we have Eli Greenfield playing Larry Rusano. Larry, the man who draws better than anyone I've ever met in my life. And he is currently playing Lost Box against Eli playing Gardy. And he also just saw a very painful Pokestop right there.
Yeah, and a matchup like Gardevoir, where your opponent's going to be using Iono and Cresselia and picking off these Sableyes, anytime you discard one without getting to use its Lost Mind attack, it feels very unfortunate.
Absolutely. And it looks like Larry at this point has 8 in the Lost Zone from what I can tell, though my counting skills are not great. So he's almost to the Lost Mind turn, but not quite. Oh,
I think it's 9. I think the dice to the side are saying 9.
9? Okay.
And at the top, there's 2 cards on top of each other. Yeah, there's 10.
Okay, so we're at 10. And unfortunately, having to get rid of the Mirage Gate hurts, especially trying to keep that Dragonite to be able to swing for a big knockout.
Yeah. Looking at just comparing boards really quick since we jumped in the middle, it seems that Eli was able to survive the early game pressure of Cramorant and Greninjas and Sableye pretty well, sitting on a Shining Arcana, a Curlia, and that active attacking Gardevoir at 4 prizes. He seems to be doing pretty well. So it's going to take a lot from Larry because basically Sableye is only going to be able to take 1 knockout a turn, and through things like Collapse Stadium and Cresselia, continuous use of Cresselia later in the game, it's going to be hard for Larry to set up multi-prize turns where he can trade favorably versus Eli.
And I think that's the big way Gardevoir gets around Lost Box is Cresselia, like you said, pulling damage from the board. But the second part is that eventually Gardy can evolve into large high HP basics, or not basics, but large high HP Pokemon, where Sableye is much less effective since you're essentially Sableyeing 3 times to take 2 prices on a Gardevoir EX.
Right. So we saw Larry play an Escape Rope. He's looking to Sableye this turn. Eli promoting Gardevoir is interesting because I think he's anticipating that that Larry is going to knock out the Manaphy with Lost Mine. However, Larry could have, and this is also greedy, but I have to talk about every play. Larry could have decided to just put damage on the Gardevoir, and then that Gardevoir could just not get out of the active.
True.
Or it could require the reversal energy and an attachment to get out of the active. So Larry could have done that. It would have been extremely greedy, and there could have been an extreme punish for it through Eli benching out and using Collapsed. That would waste a turn of Sableye. But it's just a thing to think about.
And I think Eli has a decision here too, because right now the reversal energy is activated because he is down 4 prizes to 3. And so Eli has an opportunity here to do the play you talked about with Collapsed. He could throw a bunch of energy everywhere with Gardevoir EX to then set up the Sableye. And we may see an Iono here, since Eli appears to be asking Larry about hand size. And yep, we do see the Iono try to put Larry down to 3, and then take the knockout on the Sableye with either Cresselia or Gardevoir or whatever Eli's really feeling.
I'm not terribly fond of benching Cresselia here because you kind of don't want it to have any existing damage on it, or any damage on it greater than 2 before it attacks so that it can live and force your opponent to Sableye. So, but
True.
he is Ionoing, and I think he's anticipating that he wouldn't draw it off Iono. Maybe he's used a lot of Fog Crystal and Artisan, etc. But, oh, okay.
Why? And I wonder why Eli's attaching energy to the active Gardevoir, knowing that the reversal energy is activated right now.
I think he's anticipating that it could get put to 120 damage and be unable of retreating, or not
That's
be able
very
to treat.
possible.
And so I think he's just getting that set up now so that in case an energy needs to go elsewhere or in case he needs to attach Greninja or something random.
He may also not realize that the reversal energy is Oh, no, we are seeing him go in with the Cresselia play. in order to take a knockout on the Sableye with Cresselia, which I don't mind.
No, I like this too. He was able to evolve his entire board, keep the reversal around, so this Gardevoir is still going to be a fresh attacker later in the game, and that's what's
Yes.
most important, is if this Gardevoir can stay fresh and stay as a favorable one prizer, there aren't many good attackers in Larry's deck that can hit 140.
So this is interesting in bouncing the collapsed stadium. I like it from the sake of disrupting Larry and limiting him from being able to draw out the Pokestop. But I almost would have liked to see that after Larry tried to stack up more damage on a Gardevoir EX to just undo a couple of his turns.
Yeah, that may have been a little premature. You're not, because he didn't get rid of anything on his board with it, right?
Correct.
He just got rid of the Pokestop.
Yep.
I don't know. I think it's a little premature because you're putting your opponent at 3 cards. He's down a Super Rod. He's down He's down 2 Super Rod. He's down a lot of stuff.
Yes.
And so even if he is able to hit a knockout this turn, if you let him think he's climbing back into the game and then just wipe out, like you said, wipe out whatever he puts the damage on and Iono him, Larry's going to have a lot harder of a time climbing back at that point than he is when he still has access to some recovery cards.
Absolutely. And I think in this case, if you're Eli, I feel like you have to. So advancing the Gardevoir EX is tough because if Larry does go in with Dragonite or something similar, now you're in a bit of a sticky situation in being able to take the knockout. Luckily for Eli, Larry's Dragonite's currently at the bottom of his deck.
Right. I like this promotion of the Gardevoir. It's either the fresh Gardevoir or the Greninja, but putting Greninja up is kind of risky because if Larry's able to find Cramorant, suddenly you're giving him a route back into the game via one prizers. So I'm a fan of promoting this Gardevoir because it's going to take at least 2 to 3 more attacks after this to even get close to knocking it out. But Larry just passes, and this is going to be a big swing in momentum for Eli because before this turn, Eli was basically just playing the way the matchup goes. You're just making your opponent have it every turn, and
Yep.
then if they ever miss, you're just in a big advantageous position. And that turn has come where Larry misses and is unable to Sableye, and now Eli is just going to go so far ahead, even targeting down this Greninja and saying, I don't even need to bench Manaphy now. You're not
Well-
going to have any sort of attack next turn.
Actually, I don't think Eli is going to knock out Greninja. I think he's shoving Greninja into the active and then is going to knock out a Comfy to reduce the amount of flower selectings that Larry's able to see this turn, which is an interesting play, and I don't hate it, but I agree. Ninja's still going to let him see 2 cards, so do you think this is the right move?
You know, I'm not sure. I like it. I like it in the sense that it forces Larry to have one more switching card if he wants to use Comfy. I also like it because he's forcing Larry to use an energy from his hand. He's basically forcing Larry to have extra cards in his hand to see more
True.
cards, as opposed to Comfy just being a freebie. But as we know, Larry had it. I think I would have liked to see this boss be held in case Larry ever goes for a double Sableye bench, or I don't know, just ever has to bench a 2 prizer and use for a Seal Stone. There's just a lot of times where Larry could bench something and have to hope he can't get punished for benching it, and Eli could capitalize. Because at the end of the day, this still is knocking out a Comfy, and your opponent still has a lot of switching cards in their deck.
Absolutely, and I would tend to agree with that. It's, are you using your resources to the maximum value? And although using that resource does give Eli an advantage, force Larry to have one more thing, trading your supporter, your Gust for turn, for Larry needing to have a switch out of a relatively large hand kind of hurts because that's a lot you put away. And Larry actually does draw into the Dragonite. So we may see here, it looks like he ditches the Manaphy and the Battle VIP. We could see a Dragonite hit here, but that feels very incorrect, if I'm being honest. Because I don't know if the Dragonite's useful anymore until it's taking a one-shot.
Right. Another thing to note is I think Larry actually might have access to 2 Super Rod.
Yes.
Because I thought, so one of those cards might have been the Palpad. I was judging by the silver bordering. So 'cause the only
okay.
silver border cards that this deck really plays are Nestball, Palpad, and Super Rod. So it might have just been a Palpad or a Nestball because we just saw him play one and then get one off that chorus, which does help for the recovery cards. But anyway, yeah, talking about that Dragonite attack, I don't think that's the best play, but he really has no other play.
Well, I actually see the play he's teeing up here. But he can't even use the Echoing Horn because the Collapsed Stadium is in play.
He
So
has
he's going to
vacuum.
have to vacuum away. Yes, exactly. So he'll have to vacuum away the Collapsed Stadium. And I think the play he's setting up here is vacuum away the stadium, Echoing Horn or Waltz onto the bench, Sableye the Ralts, or Ninja the Ralts, and Ninja onto one of the Gardevoir EX, so that next turn, Larry can drop the Dragonite, Mirage Gate to the Dragonite, boss up the Gardevoir EX that has sufficient amount of damage on it, and take the knockout to win the game. And that way he doesn't expose a 2-prizer and forces Eli to still have 2 more turns before he can win the game.
And one thing interesting off the Super Rod, maybe for having a lack of deck knowledge, Larry put back 2 Water Energy when there's already some available to him in the deck. So now Larry only has 2 Water Energies left in deck.
And no Psychic Energy or Lightning.
There's a Psychic Energy and a Lightning Energy in his hand, but there's also those in the discard pile. So I think for maximum value off of Mirage Gate, I would have preferred to put another different colored energy, preferably Psychic, back in the deck for things like Sableye.
And it's interesting. He actually got rid of the Lightning Energy with the Vacuum. So I wonder. Oh, but that is not a very playable hand anyway for Larry. So I think he's just kind of hoping he can take some prizes and set himself up to still close out this game somehow. So if you're Larry, what do you hit here?
I think it's got to be one of the non-2 prizers because you need, at this point, your win condition is Cresselia, Gardevoir, and Greninja, and some sort of combination before your opponent takes 2. Don't think that's possible because Sableye could do maximum 240. Greninja could do 360. Yeah, there's just no efficient damage way to lay out the damage to take the knockout. The best thing that Larry could do is have 90 damage on one of the last 1 prizers, but he wouldn't be able to close out and take that final last prize.
And that's why I'm thinking again, when you talk about the ways to win the game, like playing not to lose, I think the only out Larry has with the amount of time he has remaining is to knock out a Gardevoir EX because he's not going to have time to spread enough damage before Eli takes all of his prizes. So is it unlikely that he finds it? Absolutely. But I don't know what other out he has to win the game here.
I just don't even think Larry had the ability to take a knockout on the Gardevoir EX. I think
not last turn. Absolutely not.
Well, even this turn, to get the knockout on the Gardevoir EX, he probably would have needed to Lost Zone the Psychic Energy, keep the Lightning Energy, because then he would have Water, Lightning in the deck available to him.
Exactly.
But that's still contingent on if he has Boss available.
And completely agreed. And that's why I was surprised by the Lightning Energy Lost Zone rather than the Psychic, because Sableye isn't a win condition for him at anymore. That isn't a win condition anymore for him at this point. And the only out, though, he may have is and that is no longer an out, really. And it looks like Eli's going to use Cresselia to take a knockout on the Comfy. I think that's going to just about seal the game.
Yeah, it's going to leave Larry with 2 cards, draw for turn. You can't even use concealed cards because you need those energies to get off any real meaningful attack. But you have nothing else to do, so you might as well see 2 cards and come up with a miracle plan. But there is none at this point.
I don't believe there is. And we do see a Sableye, but unfortunately, I don't know how much that helps here. Larry does have the board in hand, but with Eli having the energy available, there's already 2 energy on the Gardevoir, Shining Arcana Gardevoir. That also, that about seals it up too.
Yeah, that's another, a 3rd or 4th nail in the coffin at this point.
And I think at this point, Larry's just trying to play down his whole hand and say, you got it, my guy. And Eli takes the win to go to 4-1-1. Larry falls to 4-2. And so at this point, we're just going to see how placement ends up for everyone. And I think it's going to come down to, for first place today, whether or not Steven or Sky has the best resistance, both at 5-1.
Well, it's strange because Steven lost at some point in the tournament before. So the previous round, Ryan and Sky played at the undefeated record. So Ryan's resistance, we were talking about his resistance. His loss is Sky. Sky's loss is Steven, but Steven lost early in the tournament. So Steven's resistance is probably worse than both Sky and Ryan. So it's really confusing because there's no undefeated. So there's probably going to be 3 or 4 5-1s.
Yes.
And then if there's 3, Eli's probably going to squeak in at the 4-1-1. But we're paying out top 8 points, so there'll be some 4-2s that squeak in there as well. So maybe Larry still has a chance at some points.
Absolutely. And so we'll see from a Nerd Rage standpoint, though, there definitely is prizing to go around with everyone buying in. So we'll see who's able to get that prizing. And from our standpoint, though, as commentating, watching these games, this is going to be the end of the night hanging out with us. So just wanted to say, really appreciate everyone contributing in chat, hanging out, making fun of me when I say things like meowt. You know, we're all here to have a good time. So, just as a reminder, too, as we said, Nerd Rage League Challenge was this month. This is our big CP event for the month. We will have a new league challenge every month, typically the last Thursday. And then we will have our Nerd Rage Quarterly Cup that will be $1,000 event sometime in the next couple months. And even beyond those, like you said, we have Pokemon every Thursday. It's an awesome community. We would love to have you come hang out. And when we can, we'll also be streaming. So if you can't make it to the store, we would love to see you here on stream with us. So thank you all very much for coming out. It was great to spend time with you. Frank, thank you for the excellent commentary and feedback. It is awesome to have you on the cast here with me. And we'll look forward to talking with you all soon. Have a great night.